Hey everyone, I'm Camila, and I want to tell you about my life. I grew up without a lot of money, but my husband Jackson had a totally different childhood. His family was rich, and he even started his own successful business. I have a good job too, but I still feel connected to my middle-class background. The only problem is my mother-in-law Addison. Dealing with Addison was like trying to navigate through a storm. But Jackson's dad, Grayson, was great. Addison, though, enjoyed putting me down and making me feel small about my family's money situation. She criticized us in private and even in public. Jackson always had my back, but Addison's insults never stopped. It got so bad that I thought about leaving Jackson because I didn't want to deal with his family anymore. But Jackson's love and support kept me going. He was amazing, unlike his mom. With time, I got better at handling Addison's behavior. So when she showed up with a flashy wedding dress right after we booked the venue, it didn't surprise me. She proudly showed off the dress, asking us what we thought. Isn't it amazing? It's from that fancy bridal shop you guys couldn't afford with your wedding budget, she said, not hiding her dislike. When I mentioned that her dress was too fancy for the occasion, she glared at me, clearly upset. I felt really uncomfortable then, not knowing how to handle her extravagant behavior, especially since Jackson and I were planning a simple wedding with just 60 guests to save money. We didn't want to spend too much, so I found a simple wedding dress that fit our budget. But Addison's dress was way too flashy. It was so extravagant that it would definitely steal the spotlight from me at my own wedding. It was obvious she picked it on purpose, knowing it would make a big statement. When I gently suggested she wear something else, Addison got really mad. How dare you tell me what to wear? I spent $125,000 on this dress. Do you really think I'd waste that money? I'm wearing it, no questions asked. Jackson tried to step in, saying, Mom, listen to Camila. That dress isn't right for our small wedding. Please pick something more suitable. But Addison wouldn't change her mind. No way, Jackson. I love this dress. I'm not settling for some random dress like your wife. I have my home standards. It's my big day too as the mother of the groom, she insisted, ignoring how ridiculous she sounded. Jackson, surprised, argued back, Addison, it's not your big day. Stop trying to steal all the attention. You're not wearing that dress to our wedding. The argument got intense quickly. Addison refused to give up on the dress, leading to a heated exchange between her, Jackson, and Grayson. The tension got so bad that we had to leave early without resolving the issue. Jackson was frustrated, saying, I can't believe my mom would do this. She's being unreasonable. Maybe she shouldn't even come to the wedding. But kicking Addison out of the wedding could make things worse. If we disinvite her, she might make an even bigger scene. She doesn't keep promises, and she does whatever she wants. We need to think of a smarter solution, I suggested, thinking about what might happen if we excluded her from such an important day. Jackson was frustrated too, admitting how badly his mother had treated my family and me over the years. I'm tired of her insults and disrespect. It has to stop. She can't ruin our wedding. So we agreed. We needed a plan that would keep Addison from causing trouble without making her suspicious or angry. As time passed, Addison stuck to her decision, leaving us to plan carefully to keep our wedding focused on our love, not her showing off. We all agreed that we needed a smart plan to handle the situation. So Jackson, Grayson, and I got together to figure it out. We were tired of her disruptions and all wanted to make sure she didn't take over our wedding. After talking it through, we came up with a plan and quietly started putting it into action, making sure Addison didn't catch on. We stopped talking to her about the dress and only gave her basic information about the wedding, which didn't bother her much since she was too busy trying to outshine me. Just a few days before the wedding, we were having dinner at my in-laws, and Addison couldn't contain her excitement. I can't wait for your wedding, Jackson. I've been thinking about it for so long. My dress and jewelry are all ready to shine. It's going to be such a special day, she said, clearly thrilled, though it was obvious she was most excited about showing herself off. It will be special, especially because I'll be marrying Camila, Jackson responded subtly, trying to bring the focus back to us, the real reason for the celebration. But Addison quickly made it about herself again. Sure, Camila will look nice, but next to me in my expensive dress, I doubt it. I spent a lot to make sure I stand out. Hearing this, I couldn't help but admire Addison's boldness, insisting she was better and planning to steal the spotlight from the bride on her big day. Jackson complimented Addison's dress to keep things calm. while I silently appreciated his support, squeezing his hand under the table. Grayson, always the wise and calming presence, played a crucial role in our plan. He gently teased Addison, pointing out how strange it was for her to make such big plans for a wedding that wasn't hers. "Addison, you're really going all out for a wedding that's not even yours. Shouldn't we focus on the couple getting married?" His remarks subtly reminded everyone of the real reason for the celebration, steering the conversation away from Addison's self-centered plans without causing more trouble. This clever move was an important part of our strategy to handle the situation gracefully, making sure the wedding stayed a happy occasion for us and our guests, not just a platform for Addison's ego. As the wedding drew near, Addison insisted on having only the best makeup artist for herself. "For my son's big day, I need top-notch treatment. After all, I'm the mother of the groom," she declared. She was determined not to mingle with guests she felt were beneath her, especially while wearing her expensive jewelry, fearing it might get stolen by those unfamiliar with such luxury. Grayson had a clever idea. "Why not get ready at home? It's safer and more comfortable, especially with all your plans," he suggested. Addison loved the idea of making a grand entrance and praised Grayson's thoughtfulness, unaware of our hidden agenda. Grayson exchanged a knowing look with us, showing that our plan was going smoothly. Caught up in her own excitement, Addison didn't realize she was falling into our trap. The thought of her surprise on the wedding day brought quiet satisfaction to Jackson and me. Even though I wish I could see her reaction in person, knowing the plan was in motion allowed me to focus on the joy of the upcoming wedding, feeling a sense of relief. While there was a slight worry about the plan being discovered, Jackson and our supportive friends helped ease those concerns. Everything was organized perfectly, reigniting my excitement for the special day. After months of stress, I felt genuinely thrilled about our wedding for the first time in a while. It was shaping up to be a celebration of our love, free from any outside drama. As the wedding morning arrived, bright and beautiful, it felt like the start of a new chapter we had been eagerly waiting for. The weather was perfect, adding to the joy of the day. Grayson, my amazing father-in-law, was the first to arrive at the venue, well before the rest of us. He stopped by to check on me, and despite my nerves, he'd assured me that everything was going according to plan. "Don't worry, dear," he reassured me, explaining his early arrival was due to Addison's difficult behavior. "Her makeup artist won't be here for another hour. We have plenty of time." I felt immensely grateful for Grayson's support. "Thank you so much, Grayson. I can't express how much this means to me," I told him. He smiled warmly, reminding me that I was now part of the family and assuring me that the day would unfold just as we had envisioned. His presence was a comfort, especially considering the challenge of dealing with Addison as my mother-in-law. I felt fortunate to have Grayson by my side. After checking in on me, Grayson made his way to where Jackson and I were getting ready for the ceremony. The day was shaping up to be everything I had ever dreamed of. I'll always remember the look of love on Jackson's face as I walked towards him, escorted by my uncle. Both of us were overcome with emotion, surrounded by our closest friends and family, with Grayson's supportive presence adding to the moment. As for Addison, her grand entrance didn't go as planned. Dressed in her expensive gown and covered in diamonds, she expected all eyes to be on her. But when she arrived at the venue, she was in for a surprise. It was empty. Confused and a bit panicked, she called Jackson, her voice filled with disbelief. "Jackson, what's going on? Why is nobody here?" she asked, clearly caught off guard by the turn of events. Addison frantically searched for us at the venue, puzzled by the absence of familiar faces. Jackson broke the news. She wasn't at the right place because she hadn't been invited to the real wedding. Her confusion quickly turned to disbelief, eliciting laughter and amusement from our side. Even Grayson struggled to contain his laughter, finding the situation quite amusing. As Addison pressed for answers, insisting she was speaking with Jackson and not me, her confusion grew deeper. Jackson calmly explained that although the venue she was at had been booked initially, we had chosen a different location for our ceremony. Learning that the wedding had already happened without her left Addison in disbelief, questioning why she hadn't been informed earlier. Jackson, growing impatient, pointed out that her exclusion was intentional, a decision made to prevent the disruptions her presence might cause. Despite his explanation, Addison couldn't believe that her own son would go to such lengths to keep her from his wedding. The conversation heated up as Jackson confronted her about the unnecessary drama surrounding her dress and her attempts to steal the spotlight from the bride. His firm stance surprised Addison, who struggled to come to terms with the consequences of her actions. Jackson's firm assertion that the day belonged to him and his wife, not to his mother, marked a clear end to the dispute, highlighting the significance of the occasion for the couple over any individual's desire for attention. Jackson emphasized that he would no longer tolerate Addison's disruptive behavior, making it clear that the wedding day was about him and his wife, not anyone else. After delivering this message, he ended the call. Despite Addison's continued attempts to reach him and multiple calls to Grayson, we went on to celebrate our reception surrounded by loved ones, undisturbed by the unfolding drama. During a moment alone, I noticed a call from Addison on my phone. Preparing myself, I answered, only to be met with accusations and insults. She blamed me for her exclusion from the wedding, accusing me of manipulating her son and labeling me a gold digger, envious of her potential to outshine me on my own wedding day. I calmly refuted her claims with facts, explaining that Jackson makes his own decisions based on what he believes is right, and his choice to exclude her was his own, though I did not try to influence him. Undeterred, Addison threatened to crash the reception, claiming she was already outside. I brushed off her threats with a mix of disbelief and indifference, reassuring her that she would find no support here. Returning to the reception, I braced myself for whatever scene might unfold. As expected, Addison's attempt to enter the venue quickly escalated. Dressed in her extravagant gown and denied entry by security, she epitomized frustration and entitlement, her actions bordering on the absurd. Rather than garnering sympathy, this spectacle only reaffirmed our decision to keep her away from our celebration. The guests, aware of the situation, rallied behind us, leaving no room for Addison's theatrics to disrupt our special day. Her attempt to steal the spotlight didn't end in triumph, but in a public display of her own making, starkly contrasting with the joy and unity inside. The disturbance Addison caused outside the venue quickly caught the attention of our guests, prompting everyone to witness the source of the commotion. When Jackson came across his mother causing a scene, his frustration reached its peak. He confronted her, dismayed by her refusal to respect his wishes and her insistence on blaming his wife. "Mom, what are you doing here? I clearly told you that you weren't invited. Why can't you understand that?" Jackson's patience wore thin as Addison played the victim, accusing him of being manipulated by his wife, whom she labeled as jealous. "Mom, listen to yourself. My wife isn't the problem here. It's you trying to overshadow her with that extravagant dress and jewelry. You knew she had a modest budget. Your actions were meant to belittle her," Jackson argued, hoping to make her realize the selfishness of her behavior. Addison, seeking support, turned to Grayson, hoping he would defend her actions. But Grayson, equally shocked by her behavior, stood by Jackson. "That dress isn't just any dress, Addison. It's practically a wedding gown. How can you not see how inappropriate your actions are? Look around, no one agrees with you," Grayson pointed out, his disappointment clear. Addison's attempt to justify her choice by insulting Camila's family and guests only made the situation worse. "They don't get it because they're from a different background," she argued, clinging to her misguided beliefs about maintaining her supposed class. But Grayson had had enough. "That's it, Addison. I won't let you insult my daughter-in-law and her family any longer. You've crossed the line this time," he declared, standing firm against her unfounded accusations and sense of entitlement. The conflict highlighted the sharp contrast between Addison's self-centeredness and the united front presented by Jackson, Grayson, and the supportive guests. Her attempt to crash the wedding, instead of gaining sympathy, only reinforced her isolation and confirmed the wisdom of excluding her from the ceremony. Grayson's firm defense of my family was a powerful moment for me, showing the depth of support and love I had found within Jackson's family, despite Addison's disruptive presence. This act of solidarity, affirming me as part of the family, was deeply touching, bringing me close to tears. It strengthened my belief that choosing to align my life with Jackson and his family, separate from Addison, was one of the best decisions I had ever made. Shocked and angry at Grayson's rebuke, Addison couldn't understand how her husband could speak against her, especially to defend what she saw as outsiders. She held tight to her beliefs of being superior, criticizing the wedding and our union. But Grayson's response was surprising and definitive. He expressed regret not for our wedding, but for his own with Addison, admitting their marriage was a mistake due to her unbearable behavior. Then he announced his intention to divorce her, leaving Addison speechless. Grayson wasn't alone in his decision. Jackson also cut ties with his mother, prioritizing the well-being of his wife and their future together over Addison's toxic influence. This decision showed a commitment to shield our new family from further turmoil. Addison was shocked and disbelieving. Her reliance on Grayson and Jackson for financial support had been a pillar of her extravagant lifestyle. Grayson's mention of divorce, along with the prenuptial agreements in place, meant Addison stood to lose not only her family but also the financial security she had taken for granted. Her lavish spending, highlighted by the purchase of the expensive dress, had been unsustainable on her own, relying instead on her husband's wealth. The news of impending divorce and our decision to cut ties with Addison marked a turning point for her. The consequences went beyond losing family connections to a harsh financial reality. Her once secure future, buoyed by wealth and status, now looked uncertain, with the protective clauses of prenuptial agreements leaving her with little to claim. This sudden change in circumstances served as a sobering reminder of the cost of her actions and attitudes, highlighting the transformative impact of Grayson and Jackson's decisions on our collective future. Jackson, Grayson, and I had discussed the situation thoroughly, recognizing the need to set boundaries to protect our new family. Grayson had been considering separation from Addison due to long-standing unhappiness, while Jackson and I were determined to shield our relationship from her toxic influence. Addison, taken aback by the realization that her actions had real consequences, had to face the fallout publicly. Her pleas for leniency, framed as an overreaction to a single dress incident, were met with firm rebuttals. It was evident to everyone, especially Jackson and Grayson, that her behavior went far beyond one incident. They pointed out her consistent mistreatment of me as the underlying problem, dismissing her claims of unfairness as baseless. In a last-ditch effort to gain sympathy, Addison turned to me with tears, pleading for forgiveness. She clung to me, painting herself as a remorseful victim of circumstances. Yet her plea lacked sincerity. It quickly turned sour as she resumed name-calling and accused me of tearing her family apart. Her abrupt shift from fake remorse to open hostility only reinforced our decision to distance ourselves from her. Her failure to offer a genuine apology or acknowledge the impact of her actions further alienated her, not just from me but from everyone present. The guests, initially watching quietly, grew increasingly disapproving as Addison's true colors emerged once more. This scene marked a significant moment for our family. It wasn't just about keeping Addison at arm's length. It was about reaffirming our commitment to respect, unity, and the well-being of our shared future. Addison's failed attempt to reconcile, quickly overshadowed by her return to blame and manipulation, only strengthened our determination. The way forward was evident, marked by a united stance against toxicity and a shared commitment to nurturing a supportive and loving environment free from past grievances. Jackson acted swiftly. Without allowing Addison a chance to argue, he instructed security to escort her out. Meanwhile, both sides of the family and our friends openly criticized her behavior. It was a moment of validation as we watched her being escorted away, allowing us to resume our celebration surrounded by genuine supporters. The very next day, Grayson took decisive action. He returned home only to inform Addison to leave their shared residence and had his lawyers serve her with divorce papers. Her attempts to sway Grayson with tears, screams, and threats in front of the lawyer were futile. When she attempted to approach us, seeking an ally or a way to disrupt our peace, we made a conscious choice not to engage, safeguarding our new life together from her drama. Our phones and social media became Addison-free zones, eliminating any avenue for her to reach out. As for Addison's outcome, it was swift and fair. The divorce left her in financial hardship, her attempts at manipulation proving futile. Her pleas for help went unanswered, forcing her to face the consequences of her actions alone. Eventually, she returned to her hometown, hoping to rebuild her life and reputation, seeking employment and a fresh start. These developments brought us profound relief and closure. With Addison's turbulent influence no longer present, our lives thrived. We hope she finds a path forward that keeps her away from us, allowing us to move on from this chapter without further discord.
I stood at the kitchen counter, chopping onions for my signature beef stew, when Josie burst through the front door. Her face was flushed, eyes wild with a mix of anger and something else I couldn't quite place. "Mom, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. I set down the knife, wiping my hands on my apron. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Josie paced the kitchen, her hands clenched into fists. "I saw Dad today. He was with Claudia." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, with Claudia?" "They were at the mall, holding hands. I saw them, kissing." Josie's voice cracked on the last word. The room started to spin. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Are you sure it was them?" Josie nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm positive, Mom. I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath, trying to process this bombshell. Steve and Claudia, my husband and my best friend? It couldn't be true. But Josie wouldn't lie about something like this. "Did they see you?" I asked, my mind racing. "No, I don't think so. I ran out of there as fast as I could." I pulled Josie into a hug, feeling her body shake with sobs. "It's okay, sweetie. We'll figure this out." Just then, the front door opened again. Jesse walked in, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He took one look at us and froze. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I released Josie and turned to face my son. "Jesse, we need to talk. All of us." We gathered around the kitchen table, the beef stew forgotten. I explained what Josie had seen, watching Jesse's face darken with each word. "I'll kill him," Jesse growled, his hands balling into fists. "No, you won't," I said firmly. "We need to handle this like adults." "But Mom," Josie interjected, "what are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. "First, I need to talk to your father. We need to hear his side of the story." "His side?" Jesse scoffed. "What side could possibly justify cheating on you?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I owe it to our family to at least hear him out before making any decisions." The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made us all freeze. Steve was home. "Kids, go to your rooms," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to talk to your father alone." Josie and Jesse exchanged worried glances, but did as I asked. As they climbed the stairs, I heard the front door open. "Laura?" Steve called out. "Something smells good." I stood up, smoothing down my apron. My hands were shaking, but I clenched them into fists at my sides. Steve walked into the kitchen, a smile on his face that quickly faded when he saw my expression. "What's wrong?" I looked at him, this man I'd loved for over 20 years, and felt my heart breaking. "We need to talk, Steve. Josie saw you today, with Claudia." The color drained from his face. "Laura, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can you explain why our daughter had to see her father kissing another woman? Can you explain why you'd betray me with my best friend?" Steve's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. In that moment of silence, I heard the muffled sobs of Josie from upstairs and Jesse's attempts to comfort her. I took a step closer to Steve, my voice low and dangerous. "You have one chance to tell me the truth, Steve. One chance to save this family. What's it going to be?" As I stared into his eyes, searching for any sign of the man I married, I realized that no matter what he said next, nothing would ever be the same again. Our perfect little family was shattered, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. I couldn't sleep that night. Steve's weak explanations and half-hearted apologies echoed in my head. By morning, I was a mess of anger and hurt, determined to see the truth for myself. I drove to Claudia's house, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. As I turned onto her street, my heart stopped. There was Steve's car, parked right in front of her house. I pulled over, my vision blurring with tears. How could he do this? How could they both betray me like this? My phone buzzed. It was Jesse. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "I'm fine, honey. I just needed to run an errand." "You don't sound fine. I'm coming to get you." "No, Jesse, But he had already hung up. I sat there, staring at Claudia's house, willing myself not to march up to the door and confront them both. 20 minutes later, Jesse's beat-up Corolla pulled up behind me. He got out and tapped on my window. I rolled it down, avoiding his eyes. "How did you find me?" "Find my iPhone," he said, his voice tight. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I gestured weakly at Steve's car. Jesse's face darkened as he understood. "Let's go home," he said, opening my door. "You shouldn't be here." As I got out, the front door of Claudia's house opened. Steve stepped out, laughing at something behind him. When he turned and saw us, the laughter died on his lips. "Laura? Jesse?" He looked between us, confusion and guilt warring on his face. Jesse stepped forward, his fists clenched. How could you, Dad? How could you do this to Mom? Steve held up his hands. Son, it's complicated. You don't understand. I understand plenty, Jesse spat. I understand that you're a lying, cheating. Jesse, stop, I said, grabbing his arm. This isn't helping. Claudia appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Laura, I'm so sorry. We never meant for this to happen. I laughed bitterly. Never meant for what to happen, Claudia? For me to find out? For my children to see their father destroy our family? Steve took a step toward us. Laura, please, let's talk about this. Not here. Not like this. No, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. We're done talking, Steve. We're done with all of it. I turned to Jesse. Let's go home. As we drove away, Jesse glanced at me. Mom, what are we going to do? I stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of our neighborhood blur past. I don't know, honey, but we'll figure it out together. When we got home, Josie was waiting on the porch. One look at our faces told her everything. It's true, isn't it? She asked, her voice small. Dad's really leaving us for her. I pulled both my children into a tight hug, feeling their bodies shake with silent sobs. I don't know what your father's going to do, I said. But I know that the three of us are going to be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters. We went inside, and I made us all some tea. As we sat around the kitchen table, I looked at my children's tear-stained faces and felt a fierce protectiveness wash over me. I want you both to listen to me, I said. What your father did was wrong. It's going to hurt for a long time, but we are not going to let this break us. We are stronger than that. Jesse nodded, his jaw set. What do you need us to do, Mom? I reached out and squeezed his hand. Just be yourselves. Focus on school, on your friends. I'll handle everything else. Josie wiped her eyes. But what about you, Mom? Who's going to take care of you? I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest despite everything. We'll take care of each other. That's what family does. As we sat there sipping our tea and making plans for the future, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. Our lives had been turned upside down, but we were still standing. And no matter what Steve or Claudia or anyone else threw at us, we would face it together. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the front door slamming. Steve was home. I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. I found him in the kitchen, slumped at the table, his head in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his eyes bloodshot and weary. Laura, he said, his voice hoarse. We need to talk. I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands steady despite the turmoil inside. Yes, we do. Steve took a deep breath. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but I am. What I did, it was unforgivable. You're right, I said, my voice cold. It was. He flinched at my tone. I want to make this right. Tell me what I need to do. I laughed bitterly. Make it right? Steve, you can't just fix this with an apology and some flowers. You destroyed our family. I know, he said, his voice breaking, but I want to try. For the kids, if nothing else. I set my coffee cup down hard, liquid sloshing over the rim. Don't you dare use our children as an excuse. You should have thought about them before you started sleeping with my best friend. Steve's face crumpled. Laura, please. I made a mistake, a terrible, awful mistake. But I love you. I love our family. If you loved us, you wouldn't have done this, I spat. He stood up, reaching for me. I stepped back out of his reach. Don't touch me, I hissed. Steve's hand fell to his side. He looked defeated, lost. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. What do you want, Steve? I asked, suddenly tired. Why are you really here? He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. I want a divorce. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even after everything, I hadn't expected this. A divorce? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Steve nodded, not meeting my eyes. I think it's for the best, for all of us. I felt the room spinning. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. You want to leave me for her, for Claudia? It's not like that, Steve protested weakly. Then what is it like? I demanded, my voice rising. Explain it to me, Steve. Explain how you can throw away 20 years of marriage, 2 children, everything we've built together for what? A fling with a woman who wears too much perfume and maxes out her credit cards? Steve's face hardened. Don't talk about her like that. You don't know her. And you do? I laughed, the sound harsh and brittle. Let me guess, she understands you in a way I never could. She makes you feel young again. Is that it? Stop it, Laura. Steve said, his voice low and dangerous. No, you stop it, I shot back. You don't get to waltz in here and demand a divorce like you're asking for a cup of sugar. You don't get to destroy our lives and then act like you're the victim. Just then Josie appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Mom, Dad, what's going on? Steve's expression softened. Josie, honey, go back to your room. Your mom and I are just talking. No, I said firmly. She deserves to know. Your father wants a divorce, Josie. He's leaving us for Claudia. Josie's eyes filled with tears. Dad, is that true? Steve looked stricken. Josie, it's complicated. I never meant to hurt anyone. But you did, Josie said, her voice breaking. You hurt all of us. She turned and ran upstairs. We heard her door slam shut. Steve moved to follow her, but I blocked his path. Leave her alone. You've done enough damage. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Laura, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, take some time apart, anything but this. I shook my head, feeling a strange calm settle over me. No, Steve, you wanted a divorce. You've got one. Now get out of my house. As I watched him leave, I felt a mix of grief and determination wash over me. Our life together was over, but I had 2 children who needed me. No matter what it took, I would protect them and give them the stability they deserved. Steve may have given up on our family, but I never would. I stood on Steve's parents' doorstep, my heart pounding. I'd always gotten along well with Martha and George, but this visit felt different, dangerous even. Still, I needed to try. For the kids' sake, if nothing else. Martha answered the door, her smile fading as she saw me. Laura, what are you doing here? I took a deep breath. We need to talk, Martha, about Steve. Talk? She hesitated, then stepped aside to let me in. George was in the living room, watching golf. He muted the TV as I entered. What's this about, Laura? He asked, his voice gruff. I sat down, clasping my hands tightly in my lap. Steve and I are getting a divorce. He's been having an affair with Claudia. The silence that followed was deafening. Martha's face paled, while George's reddened. That can't be right, Martha said finally. There must be some mistake. I shook my head. I'm afraid not. Josie saw them together, and Steve admitted it to me himself. George leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. And what did you do to drive him to this, Laura? I recoiled as if I'd been slapped. Excuse me, George, Martha exclaimed, but he waved her off. No, I want to know, he pressed. Steve's a good man. He wouldn't do this without reason. I felt anger bubbling up inside me. Without reason. There is no reason good enough to justify what he's done. Martha sat down beside me, her face a mask of concern. Laura, dear, maybe if you'd been more attentive to Steve's needs. My needs? I interrupted, incredulous. What about my needs? What about our children's needs? George scoffed. Don't bring the kids into this. They'll be fine. Kids are resilient. I stood up, my hands shaking. Resilient? Do you have any idea what this is doing to them? Josie cries herself to sleep every night. Jessie's barely speaking to anyone. Well, maybe if you hadn't turned them against their father, Martha began. I didn't turn anyone against Steve, I snapped. He did that all on his own when he decided to throw away our family for a fling with Claudia. George stood up, towering over me. Now listen here, young lady. I won't have you coming into our home and speaking ill of our son. I refused to back down. Your son destroyed our family. He's abandoning his children for a woman who cares more about her designer handbags than anyone else. Martha gasped. How dare you speak about Claudia that way? She's a lovely woman. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. You knew, I whispered, looking between them. You knew about the affair, didn't you? Their silence was all the confirmation I needed. How long? I demanded. How long have you known? George looked away. That's not important. It is to me, I shouted. How long have you been lying to my face, pretending everything was fine? Martha stood up, wringing her hands. Laura, please try to understand. Steve was unhappy. Claudia makes him happy. I felt like I was going to be sick. And what about me? What about my happiness? What about our children's happiness? Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good, George said solemnly. I stared at them, these people I'd considered family for over 2 decades. The greater good? Is that what you call destroying a family? Martha reached out to touch my arm. I jerked away. Don't, I said, my voice cold. Don't you dare try to comfort me now. You're as much to blame for this as Steve is. I headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. I came here hoping for support, for some semblance of family. I see now that was a mistake. You're not my family. You never were. As I walked out, I heard Martha call after me, but I didn't turn back. My mind was racing, piecing together all the times Steve had visited his parents alone, all the knowing looks and hushed conversations. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I'd come here looking for peace, for a way to salvage something from this mess. Instead, I'd found more betrayal, more pain. As I drove home, I made a decision. No more olive branches, no more attempts at reconciliation. From now on, I was fighting for myself and my children, and God help anyone who stood in my way. I was elbow deep in soapy water, scrubbing dishes with more force than necessary when the front door slammed open. Steve stormed into the kitchen, his face a thundercloud of rage. "You went to my parents," he shouted, not bothering with a greeting. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands, trying to stay calm. "Yes, I did." "How dare you?" Steve's voice rose. "You had no right to drag them into this." I felt my own anger rising to match his. "No right? They're my children's grandparents. I thought they deserved to know what was happening to their family." Steve laughed bitterly. "Family? Is that what you call this? You've turned everyone against me." "I didn't turn anyone against you, Steve," I said, my voice steady. "You did that all on your own when you decided to cheat on me with my best friend." He slammed his fist on the counter, making me flinch. "Don't you dare bring Claudia into this." "Why not?" I shot back. "She's as much a part of this mess as you are." Steve's face contorted with anger. "This is exactly why I want a divorce. You're always playing the victim, never taking any responsibility for your part in this." I felt like I'd been slapped. My part? What part did I play in your decision to betray our marriage vows? "You were never there for me," Steve shouted. "Always too busy with the kids, with your hobbies, with everything but me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I was raising our children, Steve. Someone had to be there for them while you were working late nights and weekends." "Don't act like you're the only one who sacrificed," he spat. "I gave up my dreams to provide for this family." "And that gives you the right to throw it all away?" I asked, incredulous. Before Steve could respond, we heard a gasp from the doorway. Josie stood there, her eyes wide with shock and hurt. "Josie," Steve said, his voice softening. "Honey, I'm sorry. We didn't mean for you to hear that." Josie shook her head, backing away. "How could you say those things, Dad? How could you blame Mom for what you did?" Steve reached out to her, but she turned and ran upstairs. We heard her door slam shut. The fight seemed to drain out of Steve. He slumped against the counter, suddenly looking old and tired. "This is why I didn't want to involve the kids," he said quietly. I felt a surge of protective anger. "They're already involved, Steve. They're living this nightmare right along with us." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Can't we try to make this work? For their sake?" For a moment, I almost wavered. Then I remembered the look on Josie's face, the pain in Jesse's eyes when he found out about the affair. "No," I said firmly. "We can't. It's too late for that." Steve's face hardened. "Fine. If that's how you want it, we'll do this the hard way. I'm calling my lawyer in the morning." As he turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. "Steve," I called after him. He paused at the door, not turning around. "I want you out of the house by the end of the week," I said. "The kids and we need space to heal." Steve's shoulders slumped, but he nodded. Without another word, he left. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, my mind racing. This was it. There was no going back now. We were really getting a divorce. I heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Jesse and Josie standing in the doorway, holding hands. Their faces were a mix of fear and determination. "Mom?" Jesse said softly. "What happens now?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "Now, we fight, for our family, for our future. It won't be easy, but we'll do it together." As I looked at my children's faces, I knew I had made the right decision. No matter what Steve or his parents or anyone else threw at us, we would face it as a team. And somehow, someway, we would come out stronger on the other side. The law office felt cold and impersonal as I sat across from my attorney, Sarah. She shuffled through a stack of papers, her face grim. "Laura, I won't sugarcoat this," she said. "Steve's playing hardball. He's going for full custody of the kids and wants to sell the house." My stomach dropped. "He can't do that, can he?" Sarah sighed. He's claiming you're an unfit mother, citing your emotional instability since the separation. I felt the room spin. Emotional instability? I'm not the one who threw away our marriage for an affair. I know, Laura, Sarah said, her voice softening, but we need to be prepared. This is going to be a tough fight. As I left the office, my phone buzzed. It was my new boss at the bakery. Laura, I need you to come in. We're short-staffed. I glanced at my watch. Josie's parent-teacher conference was in an hour. I can't. I have a commitment with my daughter. Look, he said, his voice sharp. I know you're going through a rough time, but I need reliable employees. If you can't make it, don't bother coming back. I felt tears pricking my eyes. I'll be there, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I called Josie, my heart heavy. Honey, I'm so sorry. I can't make the conference. Work emergency. The silence on the other end was deafening. It's fine, Josie finally said, her voice flat. Dad said he'd go anyway. My blood ran cold. Your father's going? Yeah, Josie said. He called this morning, said he wanted to be more involved. I ended the call, my mind racing. Steve hadn't been to a school event in years. Why now? With a sinking feeling, I realized this was part of his strategy. Painting himself as the involved parent while I was too busy working to show up. The bakery was chaos when I arrived. I threw myself into the work, trying to lose myself in the rhythm of kneading dough and decorating cakes. But my mind kept wandering to Josie, to Steve sitting in that conference, charming her teachers. As I was closing up, my phone rang again. It was Jesse. Mom, he said, his voice tight with anger. Dad's here. He's packing up his stuff. And he's taking some of our things, too. I felt a surge of panic. What? Jesse, don't let him take anything of yours or Josie's. I'm trying, Mom, Jesse said, his voice cracking. But he says as long as he's paying child support, he has a right to it. He took your recipe book, the one with Grandma's beef stew recipe. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That book was my most prized possession, filled with generations of family recipes. I'll be right there, I said, already running for my car. I broke every speed limit on the way home, my heart pounding. When I pulled into the driveway, Steve was loading boxes into his car. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted, slamming my car door. Steve turned, his face a mask of cold determination. Taking what's rightfully mine, Laura. You can't keep everything. I marched up to him, fury coursing through my veins. Give me back my recipe book, now. He smirked, holding it just out of reach. Oh, this old thing? I thought I'd give it to Claudia. She's always wanted to learn how to cook. Something inside me snapped. I lunged for the book, but Steve was quicker. He tossed it into his car and slammed the door shut. You can't do this, I said, my voice breaking. That's my family history, Steve. It's all I have left of my grandmother. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I used to love in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold indifference. You should have thought of that before you turned the kids against me, he said, getting into his car. As he drove away, I sank to my knees on the driveway, feeling utterly defeated. How had it come to this? How had the man I'd loved for 20 years become this stranger who seemed bent on destroying me? I felt a hand on my shoulder and looked up to see Jesse and Josie standing there, their faces a mix of anger and concern. Mom, Jesse said softly, what are we going to do? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stand. We're going to fight, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Whatever it takes, we're going to fight. As we walked back into the house, I knew we were facing our toughest battle yet. But looking at my children, I also knew I had no choice but to win. For their sake and for mine. The phone rang, piercing the quiet of the kitchen. I glanced at the caller ID and froze. Steve. Hello, I answered, my voice wary. Laura, we need to talk, Steve said, his tone uncharacteristically subdued. Can we meet? My heart raced. After weeks of bitter legal battles and emotional turmoil, what could he possibly want? I don't think that's a good idea, Steve, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Please, Laura, it's important for the kids' sake. I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Finally, I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, the park where we used to take the kids when they were little. As I drove there, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, hurt, and a tiny, traitorous spark of hope that I couldn't quite extinguish. Steve was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. As I approached, he stood up, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. Laura, he said, his voice cracking. Thank you for coming. I sat down, maintaining a safe distance between us. What do you want, Steve? He took a deep breath. I've made a terrible mistake. I want to come home. I want us to be a family again. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? Claudia and I, it's over, he continued. It was never real. You and the kids, you're my real family. I was a fool to throw that away. I stared at him, speechless. Part of me wanted to laugh hysterically, while another part wanted to scream. Steve, I finally managed, you can't be serious. After everything you've done, everything you've put us through, you think you can just come back? He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I know I've hurt you, Laura. I know I've hurt the kids, but I want to make it right. I'll do anything. Therapy, whatever it takes. I stood up, needing to put physical distance between us. And what about the custody battle? The house? My recipe book? Steve had the grace to look ashamed. I'll drop everything, the lawyers, the custody fight, all of it. I just want my family back. For a moment, I let myself imagine it, going back to our old life, pretending none of this had happened. But then I remembered the pain in Josie's eyes, the anger in Jesse's voice, the nights I'd spent crying myself to sleep. No, I said, my voice firm. No, Steve, we can't go back. You destroyed that the moment you chose Claudia over us. His face crumpled. Laura, please, I love you. I love our children. If you loved us, I said, feeling a strange calm wash over me, you wouldn't have betrayed us in the first place. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessie. Mom, where are you? The bakery called. They need you ASAP or you'll lose your job. Reality came crashing back. I had responsibilities, a life I'd built without Steve. I couldn't throw that away on a whim. I have to go, I said, turning away. Steve grabbed my arm. Laura, wait, don't do this. Don't throw away 20 years of marriage. I yanked my arm free, fury rising in me. I didn't throw it away, Steve. You did, and now you have to live with the consequences. As I walked away, Steve called after me, his voice desperate. What about the kids? Don't they deserve a chance to have their family back? I stopped, turning to face him one last time. Our kids deserve parents who respect themselves and each other. They deserve stability and love, not broken promises and shattered trust. With that, I got in my car and drove away, leaving Steve standing alone in the park where we'd once been happy. As I raced to the bakery, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Had I made the right choice? Was I denying my children a chance at having their father back? But then I remembered the strength I'd found in myself, the resilience I'd seen in Jessie and Josie. We'd been through hell, but we'd survived. We'd built a new life, a stronger family unit. I pulled into the bakery parking lot, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. We would face them together, without Steve. Our family might be smaller now, but it was unbreakable. As I walked into the bakery, ready to fight for my job and our future, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in months, I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision. The day of Jessie's college graduation dawned bright and clear. As I stood in the kitchen preparing a special breakfast, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. The doorbell rang and my heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was. I'll get it, Jessie called from the living room. I heard muffled voices, then Jessie appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face a mix of emotions. Mom, Dad's here. He wants to talk to all of us. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Okay, let's hear what he has to say. We gathered in the living room, Josie perched on the arm of my chair, Jessie standing protectively nearby. Steve sat across from us, looking uncomfortable in his suit. I know I have no right to be here, Steve began, his voice shaky, but I couldn't miss Jessie's graduation, and I wanted to apologize to all of you. I felt Josie stiffen beside me while Jessie's face remained impassive. Steve continued, I've been selfish and stupid. I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing. Claudia left me. My parents barely speak to me. I've lost everything. That's not our problem, Dad, Jessie said, his voice cold. You made your choices. Steve nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I know, and I'll regret those choices for the rest of my life. But I was hoping maybe we could start over? Be a family again? I felt a surge of anger, remembering all the pain we'd endured. But before I could speak, Josie stood up. A family, she said, her voice trembling. We are a family, Dad. Mom, Jessie, and me. We've been there for each other through everything. Where were you? Steve looked stricken. Josie, No, she interrupted. You don't get to walk back in here and pretend nothing happened. Do you have any idea what Mom's been through? How hard she's worked to keep us together? I reached for Josie's hand, squeezing it gently. It's okay, sweetie. But Jessie stepped forward, his face set. No, Mom. Josie's right. Dad needs to hear this. He turned to Steve, his voice steady. Mom's been working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She's been to every school event, every doctor's appointment, everything. She even learned to make Grandma's beef stew from memory when you took her recipe book. I felt tears prick my eyes at the memory of that small victory. Steve looked at me, his face a mask of shame. Laura, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved, but then I remembered all we'd been through, all we'd overcome. I appreciate your apology, Steve, I said, my voice calm, but we can't go back. We've moved forward and we're stronger for it. Steve nodded, defeat etched in every line of his face. I understand. I hope someday you can forgive me. As he stood to leave, Jessie spoke up. Dad, I still want you at my graduation, but not as my father. As a guest who's watching from afar, seeing what he lost. Steve's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. Thank you, Jessie. That's more than I deserve. After he left, we sat in silence for a moment. Then Josie turned to me, her eyes shining. Mom, I'm so proud of you. Of us. Jessie nodded, pulling us both into a hug. We made it, didn't we? I held my children close, feeling a wave of love and pride wash over me. Yes, we did, and we'll keep making it, every single day. Later, as we sat in the auditorium watching Jessie receive his diploma, I caught sight of Steve sitting several rows back. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw regret and longing in his gaze, but I felt no answering pull in my heart. Instead, I turned back to Josie, squeezing her hand as we cheered for Jessie. This was our family now, smaller perhaps, but stronger and more resilient than ever. As Jessie joined us after the ceremony, his face beaming with pride, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. We had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. So, Jessie said, grinning at us, who's ready for some celebratory beef stew? Josie and I laughed, linking arms with him as we headed out into the bright sunshine. Our future stretched before us, full of promise and hope. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that we were going to be just fine. The hospital room felt eerily quiet, the soft beeps of the monitors punctuating the silence like a ticking clock. I cradled my newborn twins, their tiny faces scrunched in peaceful sleep, oblivious to the turmoil that was about to unfold. A gentle knock at the door startled me, and a nurse entered, a somber expression etched on her face. Mrs. Archer, this letter arrived for you, she said, her voice laced with poorly concealed pity. I took the envelope, my hands trembling slightly. As soon as the nurse left, I tore it open, my heart pounding in my chest. The words seemed to blur before my eyes, but one phrase stood out in stark relief. I want a divorce. My world shattered in that moment. Calvin, the man I had loved and trusted, the one I thought would stand by my side through thick and thin, had betrayed me in the cruelest way imaginable. The letter went on to reveal his affair, his decision to abandon me and our children for another woman. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I clutched my babies closer, as if they were the only anchors keeping me from drifting away into a sea of despair. How could he do this to us? After years of struggling with infertility, these precious little ones were supposed to be the culmination of our dreams, the embodiment of our love. But Calvin's absence spoke volumes. He didn't even bother to show up for their birth, too consumed by his selfish desires to witness the miracle we had fought so hard to achieve. The man I thought I knew had become a stranger, and the life I had envisioned for us was nothing but a cruel illusion. In that moment, I made a silent vow to my children. I would be the strength they needed. I would protect them from the pain and betrayal that their father had inflicted upon us. And I would rise above this, not as a victim, but as a survivor, forging a new path for myself and my family. It was a long, sleepless night, punctuated by the soft cries of my babies and the shattering of my own heart. But as the first rays of dawn filtered through the window, I knew that this was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own story, free from the shackles of a broken marriage and a broken man. I clutched the divorce papers like a lifeline, my knuckles turning white with the sheer force of my grip. Calvin's words cut deeper than any knife, his cruelty slicing through the very core of my being. "You're delusional if you think you can handle raising those brats on your own," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You'll fail as a mother, just like you failed as a wife." My brother Evan, who had taken me in after I left the hospital, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Don't listen to him, sis. He's just trying to hurt you." Calvin scoffed, his lips twisted into a sneer. "Hurt her? I'm just telling the truth. She's nothing but a burden, and those kids are better off without her." I flinched, his words like physical blows, but Evan's presence gave me strength. "Get out of my house," he growled, his usually gentle demeanor replaced by a protective fury. Calvin shrugged, his cold eyes meeting mine for a brief moment before turning on his heel and leaving. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the soft whimpers of my newborn twins in the nursery. Evan enveloped me in a warm embrace, and I clung to him, my body shaking with the force of my sobs. How could he be so cruel? I choked out, my voice muffled by his shoulder. "He's a coward," Evan said, his voice laced with disgust. "But you're stronger than him, Miranda. You've always been the stronger one." His words resonated deep within me, igniting a spark of determination that had been flickering beneath the pain and betrayal. I pulled back, wiping the tears from my eyes, and nodded. "You're right," I said, my voice steadier than I had expected. "I can't let him break me, not when I have these two precious lives depending on me." Evan smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "That's my sister. Now let's focus on getting you and the twins settled. You're safe here, and we'll figure out the next steps together." As I held my babies close, their soft breaths brushing against my skin, I knew that Evan was right. Calvin might have shattered our family, but he couldn't destroy the unbreakable bond between a mother and her children. I would rise above his cruelty, his insults, and his attempts to diminish me. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own story of resilience and triumph. The soft coos of my twins filled the air as I rocked them gently, their tiny fingers curled around mine. It had been a few months since I had taken refuge at Evan's place, and the wounds of Calvin's betrayal were slowly starting to heal. A knock at the door interrupted my reverie, and Evan poked his head in. "Hey, you've got a visitor. It's Derek." My heart skipped a beat at the mention of my old college friend. Derek had been a constant source of support during those tumultuous times, his unwavering friendship a lifeline in the midst of the storm. "Send him in," I called out, unable to suppress the smile that crept across my face. Derek stepped into the nursery, his warm grin instantly brightening the room. "There's my favorite little family," he said, his eyes twinkling with affection. "Derek, it's so good to see you," I said, rising to embrace him with one arm, the other cradling my precious bundle. He returned the hug with gentle care, mindful of the fragile lives nestled against me. "You're looking well," he murmured, pulling back to study my face. "Motherhood suits you." I felt a flush of pride at his words, a stark contrast to the constant barrage of insults and put-downs from Calvin. Derek had a way of making me feel valued, seen, and understood in a way that my ex-husband never could. "Thanks for being here," I said softly, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you and Evan." Derek waved a dismissive hand. "Don't mention it. That's what friends are for." His expression grew serious, and he lowered his voice. "Have you given any thought to the legal proceedings?" I nodded, my grip on my children tightening instinctively. "I want to fight for full custody. Calvin doesn't deserve to be a part of their lives, not after the way he treated us." Derek's jaw clenched, his eyes hardening. "That bastard doesn't deserve anything," he spat, his usual composure slipping for a moment. "But don't worry, Miranda, I'll make sure he pays for what he's done." A surge of gratitude washed over me, and I reached out to squeeze his hand. "Thank you, Derek, for everything." His features softened, and he returned the gentle pressure. "You don't have to thank me. Just focus on being the amazing mother I know you are, and leave the rest to me." As Derek left, I couldn't help but feel a sense of renewed strength and determination. With him by my side, I knew that I had a fighting chance at building the life my children deserved, a life free from the toxicity and pain that Calvin had brought into our world. The road ahead might be long and arduous, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hope blossoming in my heart. Calvin might have shattered my dreams, but with the unwavering support of those who truly cared for me, I knew that I could pick up the pieces and create something even more beautiful. A future where my twins could thrive, loved and protected, untainted by their father's cruelty. The soft glow of the laptop screen cast a warm hue across Derek's face as he leaned back in his chair, brow furrowed in concentration. I watched him intently, my heart thrumming with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. "Are you sure about this, Miranda?" he asked, his voice low and serious. "Once we set this in motion, there's no turning back." I nodded, my resolve unwavering. He brought this on himself. It's time he faced the consequences of his actions. Derek let out a long exhale, running a hand through his hair. "All right, I've gathered enough evidence to bury him, but we need to be smart about how we play this." Leaning forward, he began to outline his plan, his words precise and calculated. "We'll start by issuing a formal demand for a fair settlement, custody, child support, and a substantial alimony. If he refuses, we'll have no choice but to go public with the information we have on his shady business dealings." My stomach twisted at the mention of Calvin's professional misdeeds. The man I had once loved and trusted had been living a double life, engaging in fraud and deceit that threatened to unravel his entire career. "Do you really think he'll cave?" I asked, my voice laced with doubt. Calvin's always been so arrogant, so sure of himself. Derek's eyes hardened, his jaw set in a firm line. "He'll have no choice. Not when the evidence is this damning. We've got him cornered, Miranda. It's time to make him pay for what he's done." A surge of determination coursed through me, fueled by the memory of Calvin's cruelty and the pain he had inflicted upon me and my children. I had spent too long cowering in his shadow, allowing his manipulation and abuse to dictate the course of my life. No more. "Let's do it," I said, my voice steady and resolute. "I'm ready to take back control." Derek's lips curved into a grim smile, and he nodded. "Then let's make that bastard squirm." Over the next few weeks, we meticulously prepared our case, gathering every shred of evidence and fortifying our legal strategy. Derek was a force to be reckoned with, his razor-sharp intellect and unwavering determination a formidable combination. As the day of the mediation approached, I could feel the tension building, like a coiled spring waiting to be released. Calvin had no idea what was coming, and I couldn't help but savor the thought of wiping that smug grin off his face. When the moment finally arrived, I steeled myself, drawing strength from the knowledge that I was no longer fighting alone. Derek was by my side, a steadfast ally in the battle against my former tormentor. As Calvin strutted into the room, his arrogance practically radiating from his pores, I felt a surge of power course through my veins. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The game was on, and this time I held all the cards. The tension in the room was palpable as Calvin swaggered in, his cocky demeanor a stark contrast to the grim expressions on our faces. Derek took the lead, his voice calm and measured as he laid out the terms of our proposal. "We're prepared to offer a fair settlement," he said, sliding a stack of papers across the table. "Full custody of the children for Miranda, along with child support and substantial alimony payments." Calvin's eyes narrowed, his lip curling in disdain. "Are you kidding me? You expect me to agree to those outrageous demands?" I could feel my blood boiling, but before I could speak, Derek raised a hand, silencing me. "It's a generous offer, given the circumstances," he said, his voice taking on a razor-sharp edge. Calvin scoffed, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin. "And what circumstances would those be? You have no leverage here." Derek's expression hardened, and he reached into his briefcase, retrieving a thick file. "I wouldn't be so sure about that." With a flick of his wrist, he scattered the contents of the file across the table, revealing a damning trail of evidence, financial records, email correspondence, and detailed accounts of Calvin's fraudulent activities within his company. The color drained from Calvin's face as he rifled through the documents, his bravado evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Where did you get this?" "That's not important," Derek said, his voice laced with steel. "What matters is that we have more than enough evidence to bury you, professionally and personally." Calvin's eyes darted between us, his mask of arrogance crumbling as the realization of his predicament sank in. "What do you want?" he growled, his hands clenched into tight fists. "Exactly what we asked for," I spoke up, my voice steady and unwavering. "The settlement, no contest on custody, and your silence. Agree to our terms, and this information stays buried." Calvin's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with barely contained rage. For a long moment, the room was deathly silent, the weight of our ultimatum hanging heavy in the air. Finally, he let out a sharp exhale, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Fine, you win." A surge of triumph coursed through me, but I refused to let it show on my face. Calvin had brought this upon himself, and for the first time, he was the one left powerless, stripped of his arrogance and control. As he scrawled his signature on the settlement papers, his hand trembling with barely contained fury, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The nightmare was finally over, and I had emerged victorious, not just for myself, but for my children. Derek and I exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of our shared triumph passing between us. We had played the game, and we had won, leaving Calvin to face the consequences of his own actions. As we gathered our belongings and prepared to leave, Calvin fixed me with a venomous glare. "This isn't over," he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. I met his gaze unflinchingly, a newfound strength burning within me. "Yes, it is," I said, my voice unwavering. "You lost the moment you decided to betray us." With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving Calvin to stew in the wreckage of his own making. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, justice had prevailed, and I had reclaimed the power he had tried so desperately to strip away. The future was uncertain, but for once, I didn't fear it. With my children by my side and the unwavering support of those who truly cared for me, I knew that I could weather any storm that came my way. Calvin had made the mistake of underestimating me, and now he would pay the price. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the silent kitchen as Calvin hurled his tumbler against the wall, the amber liquid splattering across the pristine tiles. His face was contorted with rage, his knuckles white from the force of his clenched fists. "That bitch," he snarled, pacing like a caged animal. "How dare she try to ruin me?" His mistress, Samantha, watched him with a mixture of fear and disgust, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. "Maybe you should have thought about before you decided to screw her over," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. Calvin whirled on her, his eyes wild with fury. "Shut your mouth," he growled, taking a menacing step forward. "This is all her fault. She's the one who pushed me into this." Samantha recoiled, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Don't you dare try to blame her for your own mistakes," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You made your bed, Calvin. Now you have to lie in it." Calvin's laughter was bitter and mirthless. "Oh, I'll make her pay all right. She thinks she's won, but I'm just getting started." As he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him with enough force to rattle the windows, Samantha sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. The illusion of their perfect life together was rapidly unraveling, and she couldn't help but wonder if she had made a grave mistake. Meanwhile, I sat across from Derek, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee as I recounted the events of the mediation. He listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I can't believe he had the audacity to threaten you," he said, shaking his head in disgust. "The man has no shame." I shrugged, trying to mask the residual fear that still lingered in the depths of my heart. "It's just empty bravado," I said, forcing a smile. "He's all bark and no bite." Derek's expression darkened. "I wouldn't be so sure," he murmured, his voice laced with concern. "Calvin's a desperate man, and desperate men are capable of dangerous things." A chill ran down my spine at his, but I pushed the uneasy feeling aside. "Even if he tries something, we'll be ready," I said, my voice resolute. "We have the upper hand now." Derek nodded, but the worry lines etched across his forehead didn't fade. "Just promise me you'll be careful," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand in his. "I don't want anything to happen to you or those beautiful kids of yours." I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his unwavering support. "I promise," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We've come too far to let him win now." As the days passed, Calvin's world continued to crumble around him. News of his professional misdeeds began to leak, spreading like wildfire through the business community. Clients and colleagues alike turned their backs on him, horrified by the extent of his deceit. Samantha, unable to bear the weight of the scandal, packed her bags and left, disappearing without a trace. Calvin was left to face the consequences of his actions alone, his once powerful empire reduced to ashes. And through it all, I watched from the sidelines, a sense of vindication washing over me. Calvin had thought he could break me, but in the end, his own arrogance and greed had been his undoing. As I held my children close, their innocent laughter filling the air, I knew that I had won the greatest victory of all, the ability to provide them with a safe, loving home, free from the toxic influence of their father. Calvin's collapse was a harsh lesson in karma, a reminder that no matter how powerful or invincible one might seem, the truth always has a way of catching up. And as I looked towards the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and possibility, knowing that I had emerged from the ashes of my past, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The sharp ring of my phone cut through the peaceful silence of the evening. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my heart sink. It was Derek. "Hello?" I answered, a sense of dread settling in the pit of my stomach. "Miranda, you need to turn on the news. Right now." Derek's voice was laced with urgency, sending a chill down my spine. Without a word, I grabbed the remote and switched on the television, my breath catching in my throat as the headline flashed across the screen, "Local businessmen embroiled in fraud scandal." And there, larger than life, was Calvin's face, his expression a mixture of defiance and barely concealed panic as he was swarmed by a pack of ravenous reporters. "Mr. Archer, is it true that you've been embezzling funds from your company?" one of them shouted, thrusting a microphone in his face. Calvin recoiled, his jaw clenched tight. "No comment," he growled, pushing his way through the throng. But the reporters were relentless, their questions growing more pointed and accusatory with each passing second. "What about the allegations of insider trading? Can you confirm or deny your involvement? How do you respond to the claims that you've been bribing government officials to secure lucrative contracts?" Calvin's face contorted with rage, his mask of composure slipping as the weight of the accusations bore down on him. "Get those cameras out of my face!" he snarled, lashing out at the nearest reporter. The scene descended into chaos, a flurry of shouting and jostling bodies as Calvin fought to escape the relentless onslaught of questions and accusations. I watched in stunned silence, my heart pounding in my chest as the reality of what was unfolding hit me. This was it. The final nail in the coffin of Calvin's once pristine reputation. As the news coverage shifted to a panel of analysts dissecting the scandal and speculating about the potential legal ramifications, I felt a surge of vindication coursing through my veins. Calvin had brought this upon himself, and now the world was bearing witness to the true depths of his depravity. The phone buzzed in my hand, snapping me out of my trance. It was Derek again. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice tinged with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "I saw it," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's really happening, isn't it?" Derek let out a long exhale. "Yes, it is, and there's no turning back now." A heavy silence hung between us, the weight of the situation settling like a thick fog. "Are you okay?" Derek asked, his voice softening with concern. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I'm okay," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "This is what we wanted, isn't it? For him to face the consequences of his actions." "Yes, but that doesn't make it any easier," Derek said gently. "You're allowed to feel conflicted, Miranda. This is a lot to process." I swallowed hard, my gaze drifting to the twin cribs in the corner of the room, where my precious babies slept peacefully, blissfully unaware of the storm raging around them. "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But I have to stay strong. For them. They deserve a life free from the toxic legacy their father has left behind." Derek was silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was laced with a quiet pride. "You're an incredible woman, Miranda Archer. Never forget that." As I ended the call and set the phone aside, I couldn't help but reflect on the long and arduous journey that had led me to this moment. Calvin's public disgrace was the final blow, the culmination of his own selfish actions and misdeeds. And yet, as I watched the news footage replaying in an endless loop, I felt no sense of triumph or satisfaction, only a profound sadness for the man he had become, and a fierce determination to ensure that my children would never bear the scars of his misguided choices. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Calvin's reign of terror was over, and it was time for me to step into the light, embracing the future with open arms and a heart full of hope. The soft glow of birthday candles flickered across the faces of my loved ones, their smiles warm and radiant as they gathered around the twins' cake. It was hard to believe that an entire year had passed since that fateful day in the hospital, the day my world had been shattered by Calvin's betrayal. But as I looked around the room, surrounded by the people who had stood by me through the darkest of times, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude and hope. Evan, his eyes shining with pride, beamed at me from across the table, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. And beside him sat Derek, his hand resting comfortingly on my arm, a silent reminder that I was no longer alone. The twins giggled and clapped their hands, oblivious to the tumultuous journey that had brought us to this moment. For them, this was simply a day of celebration, a chance to revel in the unconditional love that surrounded them. As the birthday song faded into a chorus of cheers and laughter, I couldn't help but reflect on the long and winding road that had led me here. The pain and heartache of Calvin's betrayal, the fear and uncertainty that had threatened to consume me, all of it had been a crucible, forging me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. No longer was I the meek, downtrodden woman who had cowered in the shadow of her husband's cruelty. I was a survivor, a warrior, who had stared down the demons of my past and emerged victorious. "Blow out the candles, Mommy," one of the twins exclaimed, their tiny voice cutting through my reverie. I smiled, leaning down to press a kiss to each of their foreheads before taking a deep breath and extinguishing the flickering flames with a single, decisive puff. A chorus of cheers erupted around the table, and I felt a warmth bloom in my chest that had nothing to do with the candles. This was my life now, a life filled with love, laughter, and the promise of endless possibilities. As the party wound down and our guests began to trickle out, Derek lingered behind, his gaze soft and affectionate as he watched me tidy up. "You've come so far, Miranda," he said, his voice laced with pride. "I can't even begin to tell you how amazed I am by your strength." I paused, turning to face him with a grateful smile. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You were the one who helped me find my way back when I thought I was lost forever." Derek shook his head, his eyes shining with a quiet intensity. "You found your own way," he said, taking a step closer. "I was just lucky enough to walk beside you." Our gazes locked, and in that moment the air seemed to crackle with a charged energy, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had been forged between us through fire and adversity. Before I could second-guess myself, I closed the distance between us, my lips finding his in a tentative, exploratory kiss. Derek froze for a heartbeat before melting into the embrace, his arms wrapping around me with a tenderness that threatened to undo me. When we finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, I couldn't help but let out a tremulous laugh. "I never thought I'd find happiness again," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek cupped my face in his calloused hands, his eyes shining with a fierce determination. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Miranda, and I'll spend every day making sure you get it." As he pulled me into another searing kiss, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a future untainted by the ghosts of my past. Calvin's shadow no longer loomed over me, for I had stepped into the light, embracing the strength and resilience that had been forged in the fires of adversity. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't fear the unknown. With my children by my side and the love of a good man to guide me, I knew that I could conquer any obstacle that dared to cross my path. This was my life, my story, and I was the author of my own destiny. "Asher, we need to talk. Now." I stumbled in the doorway, the sharpness in his voice catching me off guard. "What's wrong? Did something happen at work?" He didn't look up, fingers fidgeting with his phone. "No, it's about us, about you." The tension grew thick in the living room of our suburban Chicago home. Asher and I had been married for 5 years, a seemingly perfect match after meeting at a corporate event. I walked over and sat next to him, trying to decipher the meaning in his words. About me? I echoed, confused. Asher finally looked at me, his eyes steely. It's about kids, Harper. My parents, my mom especially. She keeps asking when we're going to have a child. My heart pounded. We'd talked about children in the abstract, but nothing concrete. I know it's a sensitive topic, but we've only been trying for a year. He sighed heavily. Mom says we should get fertility tests. She's worried it might be, well, you. I recoiled as if slapped. Me? You think I'm the problem? It's not about blame, he lied, poorly concealing his own doubts. We just need to know. For us. An awkward silence settled between us. My eyes stung with unshed tears. So what, you think I should get tested? Asher nodded, still not meeting my gaze. It's for the best, Harper, just to be sure. I rose from the couch, feeling a mix of anger and vulnerability. All right, I'll do it, but you have to get tested too. For the first time, he looked uneasy. Why me? It's usually on the woman. Because it's a partnership, I said firmly. Both of us should know. He grumbled something under his breath, but didn't protest further. That night, our dinner was eaten in silence, the clinking of cutlery the only sound. Evelyn's disapproving voice echoed in my mind, always demanding, always critical. I couldn't shake off the memory of her last visit. Harper, it's been 5 years, she had said over tea, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping the table. Asher needs to be a father. It's his dream. Evelyn was relentless, her sharp words cutting deep. I had smiled politely, choking on the bitterness I couldn't express. After dinner, Asher retreated to his office, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Our once seamless bond now felt like a frayed rope, barely holding on. Days turned into a blur. Appointments were made, tests were taken. The waiting was torture, with every passing hour intensifying my anxiety. Then the results came. I was fine. Relief flooded, but was short-lived. What about you, Asher? I asked, hopeful for a shared sense of relief. He shrugged dismissively. I'm sure I'm fine. It's usually on the woman, Harper. His refusal spoke volumes. I realized then how deep his doubts ran, seeded and watered by his mother's cruelty. I began to observe him more closely, his indifference, his growing distance. Each day felt lonelier. The home we built turned cold. With Evelyn's voice haunting from afar and Asher's silence deafening, our shared life dissolved into an unsolved mystery. Maybe you should see a specialist. Just to be sure, Asher suggested nonchalantly one morning over breakfast. I've already scheduled a test. What about you? I asked, finding it hard to keep the irritation out of my voice. Why me? It's usually on the woman, he repeated, taking a sip of his coffee. My heart sank at his dismissive tone. I decided to focus on the task at hand, hoping that clear results would force a change in his attitude. A few weeks later, my test results came back. The results show no issues on my end, I told Asher, holding the paper out to him. He barely glanced at it. Okay, he muttered, turning back to his work, as if the matter was of little consequence now. Asher, you promised you'd get tested too, I reminded him, trying to rein in my frustration. So he waved me off. I'm sure it's fine, Harper. Let's drop it. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn's verbal assaults grew sharper, digging deeper. One evening, at dinner with Asher and his parents, she couldn't contain her disdain. You are the reason my son can't fulfill his dream of being a father, Evelyn hissed, her voice dripping with venom as she poked her salad. It's not my fault, I snapped, taken aback by the acidity in her words. Asher could be the one with issues, but he won't listen. Asher remained silent, his eyes fixed on his plate. His passivity felt like a betrayal, deepening the chasm between us. In the car ride home, I broke the silence. Why didn't you defend me, Asher? Your mother blames me for everything. It's not that simple, he sighed. She's worried about us. No, I retorted. She's worried about you, not us. I'm getting tired of this, Asher. Asher's indifference hurt more with each passing day. I found myself increasingly isolated, documenting these painful interactions secretly. Through audio recordings, I captured the coldness in Asher's voice and the cruelty in Evelyn's words. I needed evidence, not just for myself but for any future decisions. One evening, needing clarity, I broached the topic of counseling. Asher, I think we need to see a therapist. He laughed, a sound void of humor. Therapist? You think we're that bad off? I do, I insisted. We need help, Asher. Nah, he shook his head. We're just going through a rough patch. Frustration boiled over, but I stayed calm. This isn't just a rough patch, Asher. We're falling apart. The arguments grew bitter, our once warm home filled with cold silence or angry shouts. Evelyn's relentless bullying cast a constant shadow, and Asher's indifference made it clear he had sided with his mother. My heart breaking a little more each day, I began considering legal separation. I wasn't ready to give up entirely, but I needed to protect myself. The evidence I gathered, emails, recordings, even witness statements from friends, gave me a sliver of control. Yet, despite my anger and hurt, I still held on to hope, a hope that something or someone might turn things around before it was too late. You are the reason my son can't fulfill his dream of being a father. Evelyn's words reverberated in my mind as I sat across from her during another strained family dinner. Evelyn, it's not my fault. Asher could be the one with issues, but he won't listen, I countered, my voice cracking. She narrowed her eyes. Don't you dare shift the blame. My son is perfectly fine. This is on you. Asher sat next to me, chewing his food slowly, looking anywhere but at us. Asher, I begged, please tell her. He sighed, putting his fork down. Mom, enough. Let's not do this now. Evelyn shot me a triumphant look, as if she had won another battle in her twisted campaign against me. I pushed my plate away, appetite lost. Later at home, I tried to talk to Asher about counseling again. We need help, Asher. We can't keep going like this. I don't need a therapist to tell me what's wrong, he muttered, and I don't need one to make excuses for you. Excuses? I was incredulous. You think everything's my fault? The tests were fine, remember? He said coldly. If anyone needs help, it's you. The distance between us grew wider with each passing day. Asher's hostility became more apparent, and I felt more isolated in our once loving home. One evening, desperate for a resolution, I proposed a weekend getaway to rekindle our relationship. Maybe some time away from everything will help, I suggested, hope lacing my voice. He chuckled bitterly. You think a vacation will fix this? He shook his head. There's nothing left to fix, Harper. It felt like a punch to the gut. Are you saying you don't want to try anymore? His silence was deafening. I started to gather more evidence of Asher's growing indifference and Evelyn's relentless bullying. Every recording, every email, every witness statement from friends, each piece felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. One day, after a particularly harsh argument, I confided in my friend Leah. I don't know how much longer I can do this, I admitted, tears streaming down my face. You deserve better, Harper, Leah insisted. You need to consider separating from him. I've been thinking about it, I whispered, feeling a mixture of fear and relief at the thought. Asher's behaviors grew more unpredictable. He came home late more often, his excuses flimsy. One night I confronted him. Where have you been? Out, he replied curtly. Out where, Asher? You stink of alcohol. Why do you care? He slurred, stumbling past me. We're barely even married anymore. His words cut deep, but they also strengthened my resolve. I wouldn't let him or his vile mother break me any further. I needed to protect myself. The next day, I met with a lawyer. I'm considering separation, I confessed, handing over my collected evidence. The lawyer nodded sympathetically. Given what you've documented, Harper, you have a strong case for legal separation. As I walked out of the office, the weight on my shoulders felt a little lighter. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to start taking steps to reclaim my life, even if it meant leaving Asher behind. We're done, Harper. Here are the divorce papers. The words cut through the air like a knife. I looked up from my coffee, unable to hide my shock. What? You're blaming me for something that's not even proven? Asher pushed the papers across the table, his expression cold. It's not just about the kids anymore. This isn't working. I stared at the papers, my world crumbling around me. Asher, we can still fix this, I pleaded, my voice breaking. He shook his head. No, Harper, it's over. I'm done. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You're making a mistake, I whispered. His eyes softened for a moment, but the coldness quickly returned. Maybe, he said, turning to leave. But it's my decision. I sat there, frozen, as he walked out the door. The sound of the car engine starting and then fading away left an eerie silence in the house. The divorce papers stared back at me, but I knew I couldn't just sit and wallow. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. He served me the papers, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We'll respond accordingly, the lawyer reassured. Remember, you have a strong case, Harper. I spent the next days gathering all the evidence I had meticulously collected. Emails, audio recordings, and statements from friends who had witnessed Asher's growing hostility. They were all meticulously organized. Each piece felt like a small victory. One evening I was going through some old emails when I found a particularly incriminating one. It was from Asher's mother, Evelyn, outlining how she had planned to blame me for our childlessness. "Make sure Harper meets with the specialist," the email read. "If she's the problem, we can pressure her. If not, we need to consider other options for Asher's happiness." I forwarded the email to my lawyer immediately. "This could be crucial," I wrote. Days turned into weeks as the legal wheels began to turn. Meanwhile, I started making plans to move out. I didn't want to be in the same house where every room held memories of a happier time that now seemed so distant. I broke the news to Leah over lunch. "I'm moving out," I said, pushing a salad around my plate. "I'm proud of you, Harper." Leah said, her eyes warm with support. "You deserve to start fresh." Packing my things felt surreal. Asher was distant, rarely coming home. The few times he did, he barely acknowledged me. I kept my interaction with him minimal, focusing instead on the text messages and legal updates. Finally, the day came. A moving truck idled outside, ready to take my things to a new apartment. As I took one last look around the house, Asher walked in. He paused, taking in the scene. "So, this is it," he said, his voice flat. "Yes, it is," I replied, meeting his eyes for what felt like the last time. "Goodbye, Asher." He nodded, saying nothing more. I walked out, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. As the truck pulled away, Leah called. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm better," I said, feeling a sense of relief. "It's the start of something new." I knew the road ahead would be tough, but I was ready. With my friends by my side and the evidence strengthening my case, I felt a flicker of hope. It was time for a new beginning. "You deserve better," my friend Leah said warmly, handing me a box as we moved the last of my things into the new apartment. "Move forward, Harper. We're here with you." I smiled, grateful for her unwavering support. "You're right. It's time to start anew." The apartment felt like a fresh slate, devoid of painful memories. I started my first day in a new marketing firm with a renewed sense of purpose. The team welcomed me warmly, and I quickly immersed myself in the work, finding it a welcome distraction. One evening, Leah convinced me to join her at the local gym. "Come on, Harper. Exercise is the best therapy," she insisted, dragging me out of the house. I hesitated, but eventually succumbed to her persistence. At the gym, we walked into a class led by Ian, a personal trainer with an infectious energy. His bright smile and encouraging words made the grueling workout almost bearable. "Hey, great job today!" Ian approached me as the class ended, handing me a bottle of water. "You've got potential." "Thanks," I replied, a little out of breath, but feeling good. I needed this. "Well, you're welcome to join us anytime," he said, his eyes kind and genuine. Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking forward to gym sessions. Ian's enthusiasm and sincerity were a breath of fresh air in my otherwise chaotic life. We started talking after each class, and he soon learned about my recent separation. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said one evening, sitting next to me on a bench. "But it's admirable how you're handling everything." "You've got to keep moving forward," I said, echoing Leah's earlier words. "Staying stuck doesn't help anyone." Ian nodded. "True, and for what it's worth, you seem like someone who deserves all the happiness in the world." We continued to see each other at the gym and eventually outside it as well. He invited me to dinner one night, and I agreed, feeling a flutter of excitement and nervousness. At the restaurant, he made me laugh, sharing stories from his childhood and his journey towards becoming a personal trainer. I realized how easy it was to talk to him, how natural it felt. "Thank you for tonight," I said as we walked back to my apartment. "It's been a while since I've had a good time." "I'm glad," he smiled. "You deserve many more good times, Harper." As the weeks turned into months, Ian and I grew closer. He became a beacon of support, cheering me on as I rebuilt my life piece by piece. With supportive friends like Leah and the warmth that Ian brought into my life, I felt stronger than ever. One weekend, Ian invited me to meet his friends at a small gathering. As we mingled, I couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt in a long time. His friends welcomed me warmly, and Ian stayed by my side, ensuring I felt comfortable. "You're doing amazing, Harper," Leah said later that evening. Look at how much you've grown. How happy you seem. I feel like I'm finally moving forward, I admitted, smiling. It's not easy, but it feels right. Leah squeezed my hand. You've come so far, and we'll always be here for you, no matter what. As I looked around at my new apartment and thought of my new friends, I realized I was indeed starting a fresh chapter. It wasn't perfect, and it had its challenges, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what the future might hold. Wow, look at you glowing. Congrats on the baby news, Harper, Gabe exclaimed as he hugged me tightly. I smiled, feeling a mix of joy and anxiety. This company reunion was the first time I was seeing many of my old colleagues since the divorce. Thanks, Gabe, I replied, patting my growing belly. Across the room, I spotted Ian chatting with a group of my former co-workers, his easygoing nature fitting right in. Just as I was about to walk over to him, I heard an all-too-familiar voice behind me. Harper, pregnant? This must be a joke, Asher sneered, stepping into my view. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes with a steely resolve. It's not a joke, Asher. I'm pregnant, he scoffed. So you moved on pretty quickly, huh? Seems fitting. Ian and I are happy together, and we're excited about this baby, I said calmly. Ian walked over, sensing the tension. Everything all right, Harper? Yes, just clearing things up with Asher, I replied. Asher, this is Ian. Ian extended his hand. Nice to meet you, man. Ignoring the handshake, Asher's eyes wandered to my belly again. So still think she's the problem? He muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Suddenly, Asher's current girlfriend, Taylor, appeared beside him. She looked between us, confused. What's going on? Asher here is finding it hard to believe I'm pregnant, I explained, feeling a surge of boldness. He always blamed me for our childlessness. Taylor's face paled. Is that true, Asher? Before he could answer, Ian spoke up. You know, maybe it's time you looked in the mirror, Asher. Sometimes the answers aren't as obvious as we think. Asher's jaw clenched, and Taylor's eyes widened with realization. You never took a fertility test, did you? She asked him, her voice shaking with anger. Asher looked cornered, but he didn't answer. The crowd around us grew silent, whispers spreading like wildfire. Harper isn't the problem, Asher, I said, feeling an unexpected wave of vindication. Your refusal to consider that possibility cost us everything. Taylor turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving Asher standing there, seething. He glared at me one last time before following her. This isn't over, he hissed as he walked away. Ian placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You handled that well, he said. I'm proud of you. Thanks, I sighed, the tension easing. It needed to be said. We finished the evening surrounded by supportive friends, sharing laughter and stories. As we walked out of the reunion, Ian held my hand. You okay? He asked, concern in his eyes. Better than ever, I answered, a genuine smile tugging at my lips. Finally, it feels like I can truly move forward. Back in our apartment that night, I reflected on the evening. The showdown with Asher felt like a turning point. No longer a victim of his manipulations, I felt empowered and ready to embrace my new life with Ian and our baby. As I drifted off to sleep, Ian's arm around me, I felt a sense of peace. The future seemed bright, and for the first time in a long while, I was excited for what was to come. This isn't fat, Asher. It's our baby, I said, my voice firm as I stared him down. Asher's face twisted in confusion. What? Ian stepped closer, putting an arm around me protectively. So, still think she's the problem? He said, looking Asher straight in the eye. Taylor, standing a few feet away, watched the exchange with wide eyes. Is this true, Asher? She asked, her voice trembling. Asher stammered, his usual composure collapsing under the weight of the truth. I don't know. I never thought. Taylor's eyes hardened. You didn't think because you didn't want to know the truth. You selfishly assumed Harper was to blame. Taylor, wait. Asher reached out, but she recoiled. I can't believe I trusted you, she snapped. You made me think Harper was the problem, and now you can't even face reality. The room seemed to hold its breath as Taylor turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Asher stood there, looking lost and humiliated. I took a deep breath, feeling years of pent-up frustration release. You should get tested, Asher. It's time you stopped hiding from the truth. He glared at me, but didn't respond as he stormed off after Taylor, the crowd parting to let him through. The rest of the evening was a mixture of congratulations and support from friends and colleagues. Despite the drama, I felt a sense of closure, knowing I had finally confronted the man who had caused me so much pain. Back at our apartment, Ian and I settled into bed. "You were amazing tonight," he said, kissing my temple. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling grateful for his unwavering support. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Asher had finally taken a fertility test. The news spread quickly. Asher was the one who was infertile. The revelation crushed him, and it seemed Evelyn could no longer ignore the truth. Evelyn paid me an unexpected visit one afternoon. She stood at my doorstep, looking older and more worn than I remembered. "I need to speak with you, Harper," she said, her voice strained. I let her in, curious about what she had to say. "I'm sorry," she began, sitting on the edge of the couch. "I was wrong to blame you. Asher," she trailed off, tears filling her eyes. "This is his fault." Her apology felt hollow after years of torment, but I nodded. "Thank you for saying that, Evelyn." "I've disowned him," she continued, her voice breaking. "I can't support his deceit." Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt pity. "I hope he finds a way to accept the truth," I said softly. Evelyn left quietly, leaving me with a mix of emotions. I knew I had to focus on my future, not the past. A few days later, Ian and I sat in the nursery, putting together a crib. "You know, he's going to have the best life," Ian mused, smiling at the thought of our baby. "And a wonderful father," I added, squeezing his hand. As we finished the crib, I looked around the room, filled with hope and love. My life had taken a turn I never expected, but I embraced it wholeheartedly. Ian pulled me close, resting his hand on my belly. "We've got this." For the first time in years, I believed it wholeheartedly. The painful chapters were closing, and new, beautiful ones lay ahead. "I have the family I always dreamed of," I said quietly, looking around our cozy living room filled with baby toys and soft light from the late afternoon sun. Ian smiled, his eyes filled with warmth as he held our baby boy Elijah in his arms. "And I'm the luckiest man to have you and our baby." The unexpected knock at the door broke the tranquil moment. I got up, curiosity piqued, and opened the door to find Asher standing there, looking disheveled. His presence was jarring, a ghost from a painful past now standing on my doorstep. "What do you want, Asher?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. "I need to talk," he muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "Please, just a few minutes." I hesitated but nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He looked around, taking in the warm, welcoming atmosphere of our home. Ian stood protectively near the baby, his expression guarded. "Make it quick, Asher," I said, crossing my arms. I need to apologize," Asher began, his voice shaky. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm so sorry for everything. Finding out I'm the one who's infertile, it destroyed me. Evelyn cut ties with me. Taylor left me." "I'm sorry you had to find out that way," I replied, feeling a mix of emotions. "But you treated me horribly, Asher. No apology can erase that." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I know. I was a coward, and now I've lost everything. I just wanted to say sorry." "Thank you," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But this doesn't change the past." He nodded one last time, glancing at Ian, who held Elijah closer. "Take care of them," he said before turning and walking out the door. Asher's visit left me feeling unsettled, but also freed from the lingering shadows of our past. Ian came over, wrapping an arm around me. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay," I replied, leaning into him. "It's just a lot to process." The air in the room felt lighter after Asher's departure, and I could breathe a little easier. Elijah cooed in Ian's arms, and I smiled, feeling a sense of peace. Months passed, and life settled into a happy routine. Ian and I reveled in the joy of raising Elijah, our laughter filling the home. One sunny afternoon, we took Elijah to a nearby park, enjoying the simple pleasures of family life. As we sat on a bench, watching Elijah gurgle and reach for a butterfly, Ian turned to me. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I nodded, tears of happiness in my eyes. "Yes, we have, and I wouldn't change a thing." "I'm so proud of you," Ian said, squeezing my hand. "You've shown so much strength and grace." "Thank you," I whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you." We watched Elijah play, content in the life we had built together. The memories of hurt and betrayal were still there, but they no longer held power over me. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities and the love of my new family. As the sun began to set, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The trials and tribulations of the past had forged a path to the happiness and contentment I now enjoyed. "Ian," I said softly, turning to face him. "Thank you for being my rock, my partner, my everything." He smiled, leaning in to kiss me gently. "Always, Harper. Always." And as we walked hand in hand, with Elijah giggling between us, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together, stronger and more united than ever. "Kate, how much did you inherit?" Mark's voice cut through the heavy silence of the night. "Your dad was loaded. I need to know what you got." The words felt like slaps in the face. I looked at my husband, searching for any sign that this was some misguided attempt to comfort me. But his eyes were cold, calculating. Tonight of all nights, my father's funeral, and this is where his mind was? "Nothing," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "There wasn't anything left by the time the medical bills were paid." Mark's lip curled into a sneer. "Really? Is that the story you're sticking with?" I stood my ground. "Yes, it is." He scoffed and turned away, mumbling something about how incompetent my brother Mike must have been in handling everything. I could feel the unease settle deep in my gut. Mark's true intentions were becoming clear, and they weren't pretty. I moved to the kitchen, needing a moment away from his probing eyes. I started the kettle, hoping a cup of tea might soothe my nerves, but the quiet clinking of the spoon in my mug did nothing to drown out the alarming thoughts racing through my head. Mark's voice reached me even from the other room. "I need a drink," he grumbled, the sound of him rummaging through the liquor cabinet, loud and grating. How had I missed these signs? Or had I just ignored them, hoping things would magically get better? He walked into the kitchen, glass of whiskey in hand. "You know, I thought marrying you meant a step up in the world," he said bluntly. But apparently I was wrong. I didn't reply. Words felt useless against his blatant greed. I just stared into my tea, feeling more alone than ever. After a tense silence, he finally left the room. I heard the TV flicker on, blaring some mindless show. I clenched my fists around the mug. This was the moment, right now, where everything broke open. I couldn't ignore who he was anymore, and I certainly couldn't let him have any power over my future. I decided to keep a closer watch on him. It was clear now that I couldn't trust him, that whatever affection we once shared had withered away, replaced by his hunger for wealth and status. A few days later, I received a call from my mother, Paula. She didn't offer condolences or ask how I was doing, just launched into complaints about sorting out Dad's affairs. Typical. She always favored Mike, and I was used to being the afterthought. "Kate, I need you to help with the house," she droned. "Sure, Mom," I replied mechanically. "I'll be over tomorrow." "Bring Mark," she added. "We could use a man's help." I felt my frustration spike, but kept my voice even. "Mark's busy. It'll just be me." The call ended abruptly, and I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear long after she hung up. Mark breezed into the room just then, sipping another whiskey. "Spout, pack your things," I said suddenly. He looked at me, puzzled. "What for?" "We're going to Mom's tomorrow. She needs help with Dad's stuff." He scowled. "Are you serious? I have better things to do." "You're coming," I replied firmly, our eyes locking in a silent battle. Eventually, he shrugged and walked away. That night, as I lay in bed, I listened to his soft snores and felt a pit of fear and determination grow within me. This facade was crumbling, and soon everything would come to light. It was time to brace myself for the storm. I pulled up to the old family home, a sense of dread settling over me. Mark sat in the passenger seat, tapping his fingers impatiently on the dashboard. "Let's get this over with," he muttered as he climbed out of the car. As we walked up the path, memories flooded back. The house looked the same, yet everything felt different. The door swung open, and there was Paula, her face a mix of annoyance and impatience. "It's about time," she snapped. "I've been dealing with everything on my own." I stepped inside, brushing past her coldness. "Mom, this is Mark," I introduced, though she'd met him briefly at the funeral. Paula glanced at him and nodded curtly before turning her back on us. "Mike's in the study, going through paperwork. You two can start in there." I followed her voice to the study, the room an organized mess of papers, file cabinets, and old mementos. Mike barely looked up as we entered. Seeing him again was like running into a brick wall. His smirk was as smug as ever. "Hey, big sis," he scoffed. "Finally showed up to pitch in?" "You might say that," I replied tersely. "Let's just get through this, all right?" Mark hovered by the bookshelf, shifting his weight and looking uncomfortable. Paula's voice echoed from the hallway, giving orders like a drill sergeant. I rolled up my sleeves and dipped into the dreariness of sorting through years of memories and documents. Hours passed, the air thick with unspoken tension and strained small talk. Mark wandered out, leaving me to fend for myself with Paula and Mike. "This is pointless," Mike grumbled, tossing another stack of papers aside. "Dad should have taken better care of this stuff. Maybe if you'd helped him once in a while." I let the words trail off, biting back more I wanted to say, but Mike just ignored me, pulling out another drawer, searching for something of value. Just then Paula stormed in. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said, her tone dripping with irritation. "Why are you two still in here? There's more to do in the garage." We moved to the garage, and I got hit by another wave of nostalgia mixed with frustration. Old boxes of Christmas decorations, tools my dad barely used, and a neglected bike Mike rode once before, demanding a new one. Mark had reappeared, leaning against the car and scrolling through his phone. I could sense his growing irritation. He wasn't here to help. He was here to gain. While I rummaged around, Paula fixed me with a hard look. "You know," she started, "your brother was always the responsible one. Your father and I could depend on him." My grip tightened on an old photo album. "Is that so?" "Yes," she snapped, clearly relishing the criticism. "Unlike you, running off when things got tough." I felt my pulse quicken, but I forced myself to breathe deeply. No point in arguing now. I glanced at Mark, who seemed to be barely masking his impatience. For the first time, I felt a flicker of anger at him, not just for his greed, but for what I now saw as a willful blindness to the person I had become. Eventually, exhausted and angry, we decided to call it a day. Mike and Paula stayed behind, and Mark and I drove home in silence. When we got there, Mark finally spoke. "Your family's something else, you know," he said, almost as if admiring them. "Tell me about it," I mumbled, feeling drained. As I shut the door behind us, I already knew this wasn't the end. Things were just beginning to unravel, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. The storm was coming, and this time I wouldn't be caught off guard. I met Mark when I was just getting by at a dull office job. It wasn't much, but it was steady, unlike my up-and-down family life. Mark walked into the office one day, suave and confident. He made me laugh during our coffee breaks, and soon enough we were dating. I thought he was my escape. One evening, I decided to take him to meet my family, hoping for some strange reason they'd approve. We drove to my old neighborhood, my anxiety growing with each mile. When we arrived, the door swung open, and there was my mother. "Who's this, then?" Paula asked, eyeing Mark up and down like he was another project to criticize. "It's Mark," I said, pushing down my nerves. "My husband." Paula's eyebrow arched. "Oh, finally snagged someone, did you?" Mark put his arm around me, trying to lighten the mood. "Nice to meet you, Paula. Kate's told me so much about you." She ignored his outstretched hand, focusing instead on who really mattered to her. "Come inside," she said curtly, turning toward the living room. Mike lounged on the couch, flipping through TV channels, not even bothering to look up. "Sup?" he muttered, finally glancing our way. I took a deep breath. "Mark, this is Mike, my brother." "Hey," Mark offered, but Mike just nodded, turning back to the screen. It hurt seeing how little they'd changed. Paula and Mike centered around their own little world. At dinner, the tension thickened with every passing minute. Paula gushed over Mike's recent promotion, never asking about my life or my job. I could see Mark trying to keep up, looking uncomfortable. "So, what do you do, Mark?" Mike asked suddenly, not out of interest but as a challenge. "I'm an investment consultant," he replied. Mike smirked. "Guess that pays the bills, huh?" "It does," Mark said flatly, his patience wearing thin. The real blow came later when I found my father seated alone in his study. He looked so different, frail and tired, with his breathing labored. It broke my heart. He'd been a distant but kind presence in my chaotic childhood, working tirelessly to provide for us. "Hey, Dad," I said softly, his eyes lighting up slightly at the sound of my voice. "Kate, you're here," he rasped, a weak smile appearing. We talked quietly, catching up on lost time. He confided in me, telling me how hard it had been to manage things lately, how disappointed he was in how Paula and Mike were handling everything. He looked pained, not just physically but emotionally. "I'm sorry, Kate," he whispered. "I wish I could have done more for you." I squeezed his hand. It's okay, Dad. You did what you could. Leaving the room, my chest tightened. Mark was in the kitchen, watching the interaction between Paula and Mike, his face unreadable. "It's a mess," he whispered as we walked out. "Your family, I mean." "I know," I whispered back, my voice barely holding together. This visit had reminded me why I left. The toxic dynamic between my mother and brother, their constant need to belittle me, to treat me as an afterthought. Later that night, as we drove home in silence, I made a promise to myself. I would be there for my dad, but I wouldn't be used by anyone again. Not by Paula, not by Mike, and certainly not by Mark. A week after that unsettling visit, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was tense. "Your father's getting worse, Kate," she said. "We need help." I knew this day would come. "I'll come over today," I replied, already dreading the interaction that lay ahead. I drove to the house, my mind weighing heavy with the mix of obligation and resentment. Mark didn't come this time, claiming he had a meeting. Might have been true, but I doubted it. Paula met me at the door, her face stern. "He's in his room," she said without a hint of gratitude. "And don't touch the things in the living room. Mike's sorting through some important stuff." I nodded and walked towards my father's room. Dad was propped up in bed, looking frailer than ever. His eyes met mine, a weary smile forming. "Kate, good to see you," he said, his voice a whisper. "I'm here to help, Dad," I replied, taking his hand. Over the next few days, I fell into a routine of caring for him, administering his medication, making sure he was comfortable, and speaking softly to ease his pain. Paula and Mike mostly stayed in the background with their true colors showing through their absence. One evening, I overheard a heated conversation in the living room. Paula's voice was shrill. "We need more money, Mike. Your father's hospital bills are eating up everything." "We can't sell the house yet," Mike replied. "People would talk." I paused outside the door, my anger simmering. They were already planning how to cash in, even as Dad lay dying in the next room. I entered the room, making no effort to hide my presence. "Is this really the time to be talking about money?" I snapped. Paula glared at me. "Don't you start. You disappeared for years while we dealt with everything." "Dealt with everything?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call living off Dad while he worked himself into the ground?" Mike stood up, his eyes cold. "You have no idea what it's been like. You left." "And I had every reason to leave," I shot back. Paula folded her arms. "We'll see how long you last this time." That night, I sat by my father, listening to his labored breaths. He opened his eyes and looked at me, sadness mingled with relief. "Kate, I'm so sorry for everything." My chest tightened. "Dad, you don't have to apologize." He shook his head weakly. "I wasn't there for you. Should have protected you from them." I couldn't hold back the tears. "I'm here now." The following morning, I found Paula rifling through his drawer. I stood in the doorway, my voice cold as ice. "What are you doing?" She looked up, startled. "Just organizing his things." "Sure," I said, my tone flat. "Because you've always been so organized, right?" She slammed the drawer shut. "Don't you dare judge me." "I'm not judging, I'm observing," I replied, moving to sit by my father, who had just woken up. The days dragged on with the same routine, the house thick with tension. Mike occasionally showed his face, usually to complain about something or another. I stayed focused, doing what I could for Dad. One evening, Dad's eyes sought mine with a seriousness I hadn't seen in a while. "There's a bank account," he whispered. My heart skipped a beat. "Bank account?" He nodded, struggling for breath. "Not much, but it's yours. Secret. Use it wisely, Kate." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the weight of his words. He'd done what he could to ensure I had something, a small act of protection amidst the chaos. I squeezed his hand, promising myself I would make it count. Knowing what I now did, I felt a flicker of hope and determination. My father's efforts wouldn't be in vain. I wouldn't let Paula, Mike, or even Mark control my fate any longer. This was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The call came just after midnight. I had been tossing and turning in bed, my mind restless, when the phone rang, cutting through the silence. "It's your father." Paula's voice was clipped, devoid of emotion. "He's been taken to the hospital." I scrambled out of bed, barely replying as I threw on some clothes and grabbed my keys. By the time I reached the hospital, my heart was pounding with dread. I found Paula and Mike in the waiting area, looking annoyed rather than distressed. "The doctors are with him," Paula said brusquely. We've been waiting for hours." I didn't bother to respond. Rushing past them, I found the room where Dad lay, surrounded by machines and tubes. He looked impossibly weak, barely recognizing me as I stepped closer. "Kate," he murmured. "I'm here, Dad," I whispered, clutching his hand. His grip was feeble but urgent. "Remember, the account. It's for you." "I know," I said, fighting back tears. "I'll take care of it." Moments later, his breathing grew shallow. The monitors beeped frantically and nurses rushed in. I was gently but firmly pushed out of the room. Paula and Mike stood in the hallway, waiting as if they were bored. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor emerged, his face solemn. "I'm sorry," he said. "He didn't make it." Paula's face hardened, betraying nothing. Mike sighed, as if inconvenienced. I fought to keep my composure, feeling a mix of grief and rage. They didn't even care. Back at the house, it didn't take long for tensions to explode. As I gathered some of Dad's belongings, Mike cornered me in the hallway. "What's this about a secret account?" he demanded. I stared at him, anger flaring. "None of your business." He stepped closer, his face contorted with a smirk. "I know he said something to you. You think you're getting away with it?" Paula appeared behind him, arms crossed. "Don't hold out on us, Kate. Whatever your father left, it's family property." "Don't you dare," I snapped, my voice shaking with incredulity. "You two leeched off him your whole lives. This is mine." Mike lunged, grabbing my arm. "You're not taking anything, you ungrateful." I yanked free, my temper boiling over. "Get your hands off me!" Mark chose that moment to stroll in, smirking as he took in the scene. "What's all this commotion?" "Kate thinks she's entitled to Dad's secret stash," Mike sneered. "Secret stash?" Mark's eyes lit up greedily. Fed up, I turned to leave, but Paula blocked my path. "You're not going anywhere," she spat. "Not until you tell us where that money is." "Over my dead body," I hissed, pushing past them. I stormed out, my heart racing. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up to them, about breaking free from their grasp. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to back down. That night, I sat in my apartment, clutching the small bank booklet Dad had given me. The modest sum was enough to start fresh, to carve out a new path for myself. Their selfishness and greed had pushed me too far. I wasn't the same naive girl they could push around. They were about to learn the hard way that I wasn't someone to mess with. From here on out, I would take control of my life. Their time of exploiting everything and everyone was over. The first steps of my plan were clear. The storm was here, and I was ready to face it head-on. I returned to my apartment, the weight of my father's funeral still hanging heavily over me. I barely had time to process my own grief before Mark cornered me in the kitchen. "Kate," he started, his eyes hard with impatience, "we need to talk about the inheritance again." I felt a surge of anger. "We've been over this. There's nothing significant." His face twisted with frustration. "Stop lying. I overheard Mike talking about a secret account. Your dad must have left something worth hiding." I glared at him, feeling my blood boil. "And what if he did?" "It's none of your business." "None of my business," he scoffed, stepping closer. "I'm your husband. Whatever you have, I have a right to it too." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I didn't marry you so you could pocket my family's money, Mark." His eyes narrowed. "You're being ridiculous. Besides, there's something else you should know." I crossed my arms. "What now?" Mark hesitated for a split second before dropping the bombshell. "I've been seeing someone else." The room seemed to spin for a moment. I steadied myself against the counter. "What?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Lana," he said matter-of-factly. "Mike's girlfriend. We've been seeing each other for months." Suddenly everything fell into place. His aloofness, the constant pressure about the inheritance, it all made sense. He had been planning this all along. You vile?" I started, but he cut me off. "And that's not all," he continued, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a set of papers. "I want a divorce. Sign these." I stared at the divorce papers he placed on the counter, feeling a strange mix of anger and calm. Somehow his betrayal was almost a relief. It was the final confirmation that I needed to break free from him. I grabbed a pen and started signing. He watched me, clearly expecting more of a fight, but I was done. Finished. As I handed the papers back, I felt a sense of liberation. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "Good riddance." A moment of silence passed, then Mark's smugness reappeared. "Hope you and your so-called inheritance are very happy." Just then, he walked out the door, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I sat down, breathing deeply, taking in the newfound sense of freedom. Mark was out of my life, and I couldn't be happier. The days that followed felt strangely bright despite the chaos. Mark had moved in with Lana, his dreams of wealth tied to her. Meanwhile, I used my father's modest inheritance to start planning for my future. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to rebuild. A couple of weeks later, the phone rang. It was Mike. "We need to talk," he said bluntly. "What now?" I replied, tired of their antics. "Mark," he spat out. "He moved in with Lana, thinking her family has money. They don't." I couldn't help but laugh. "Just desserts." "Good luck dealing with him," I said. "Not my problem anymore." "You're going to regret this," he hissed before hanging up. I leaned against the wall, feeling a small but satisfying victory. Mark's arrogance had led him right into a trap of his own making. As for me, I had a fresh slate and endless possibilities before me. Let them scheme and plot. I had learned the hard way how to stand up for myself, and nothing they did could take that away from me. I was finally free, ready to live life on my terms. The storm had come and gone, leaving me stronger and more determined than ever. And I wasn't done yet. I had plans, and nothing was going to stop me now. Mark's arrogant assumption that Lana's family had money proved to be his downfall. Within weeks, he was calling incessantly. At first, I ignored him, savoring the peace. One evening, the phone rang once more. I sighed and picked it up. "Hello?" "Kate, we need to talk." Mark's voice was desperate, a far cry from his usual arrogance. "Why? So you can try to worm your way back into my life?" I replied, my tone icy. "It's not like that," he pleaded. "Lana's family found out about us. They threw me out." I stifled a laugh, though I felt a tiny sense of satisfaction. "Not my problem," I said simply. "Kate, please," he continued, his voice wavering. "I made a mistake. We can fix this." I paused for a moment, savoring the irony. "You mean you finally realized what you had?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "I've been an idiot." "Well, I'm glad you admit it," I replied coolly. "But it's too late. You made your bed, Mark. Now lie in it." The silence stretched out between us, heavy and final. "Is that it, then?" he asked, his voice breaking. "That's it," I confirmed and hung up the phone. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Mark had been couch surfing, desperate and out of options. Mike had quickly distanced himself, blaming Mark for everything that went wrong and conveniently forgetting his own role in the mess. For once, I felt in control. I moved forward with my life, securing a small but significant freelance business. The inheritance my father left me became the seed money I needed. I poured my focus and determination into work, savoring the freedom and independence I had long craved. One crisp morning, while I was responding to client emails, the phone rang again. The caller ID showed Mike's number. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello? You think you're so smart, don't you?" Mike's voice seethed with anger. "Dad's money was supposed to be for all of us." "I earned it, Mike. You and Mom took everything else while Dad was alive," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I hope you're happy," he spat. "We're losing the house." I took a deep breath. His anger was almost palpable, but it no longer had power over me. "Maybe now you'll understand what it's like to work for something." "You'll regret this, Kate. I'll make sure of it," he snarled before hanging up abruptly. I set the phone down, feeling the weight of his threat. But instead of fear, I felt an unusual sense of calm. I had faced worse, and survived. What could Mike possibly do now? As the weeks turned into months, I flourished. My small freelance business grew, and for the first time in years, I felt grounded and secure. Every time I heard about Mike and Paula's growing financial troubles, a part of me felt vindicated. One evening, I sat in my small but cozy apartment, looking out over the city. I had come a long way, and the journey had been anything but easy. Yet, here I was, standing tall and moving forward. The ghosts of my past no longer haunted me. They were simply part of the story I had overcome. The phone rang again, but this time I didn't feel a jolt of anxiety. I picked it up calmly, ready for whatever came next. "Hello? Kate, it's Mom." She started, but I cut her off, my voice steady and firm. "I'm done, Mom. Take care of yourselves." I hung up, feeling a profound sense of closure. The storm had come and gone. I was free, strong, and finally living life on my own terms. The years rolled by quickly after I hung up on my mother. I poured everything into my freelance business, growing it from a side hustle into a thriving enterprise. The modest inheritance from Dad turned out to be more than just financial stability. It was the foundation for a new life. My new apartment, though small, felt like a palace. It was mine, a space free of the shadows of my past. I spent comfortable evenings reading by the window, the city lights dancing in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness of my earlier years. One afternoon, my phone rang. Seeing an unknown number, I almost let it go to voicemail, but then answered on a whim. Hello? Kate, this is Miss Johnson from the bank. I wanted to inform you that your mother's assets have been frozen. There's been a foreclosure on the house. I paused, taking in the information. Thank you for letting me know, I said before hanging up. A few days later, I found myself walking through an old, familiar neighborhood. The house looked the same, but there was a for sale sign on the lawn. I felt an odd mix of nostalgia and triumph. Paula and Mike's reign of exploiting Dad's hard work had come to an end. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. It was from Mike. You think you've won, don't you? This isn't over. I rolled my eyes. Grow up, Mike, I muttered, texting back a simple, move on with your life. I put the phone away and continued down the street, my steps lighter than they had been in years. Months passed, and my life continued to flourish. One chilly morning, as I was setting up a new project for a client, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mike standing there, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Kate, he began, desperation in his voice. I need help. I sighed, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. Mike, you've had chances, plenty of them. It's different now. We've lost everything. Mom's sick, he pleaded, his bravado gone. Look, I can't keep being your crutch. You need to stand on your own, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. We're family, he insisted. Family? I scoffed. You never acted like it. You chose to ignore Dad's wishes, and now you're paying the price. His shoulders slumped. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. You need to go, I said finally. Figure out your life. He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I'm sorry, Kate. I watched as he walked away, a sense of finality settling over me. It wasn't my job to fix their mess anymore. I had my life to live and my own path to follow. As weeks turned into months, I started receiving updates on Paula and Mike through old neighbors. Their lives had become a cycle of struggle and regret. Strangely, I felt no satisfaction, just a profound sense of relief that I had escaped that toxic environment. One day, while taking a break from work, I found myself heading to a small, secluded park not far from my apartment. It was a quiet place, full of large oak trees and benches. I picked one near a small pond and sat down, the cool breeze soothing. As I sat there, I felt an odd sense of closeness to my father. It was almost as if his spirit was there, watching over me. I closed my eyes, taking in the peace of the moment. I've come a long way, Dad, I whispered to the wind, feeling his presence in the rustling leaves. Opening my eyes, I looked at the world around me with a sense of accomplishment. I had fought hard for this peace, and I would cherish it. There was a future ahead, bright and full of promise, and I was ready for whatever came next. Fine, then just do it already. Ethan's voice boomed from the kitchen into the living room, where I sat going through last week's expenses. Do what? I fired back, not looking up. You should transfer the money to her account. You know she's struggling. You gave her almost everything, didn't you? I closed my laptop, exhaling sharply. I don't think that's necessary, he said, his tone ice cold. He walked into the room, hand running through his messy hair. You're really cold-hearted, you know that? I flicked my eyes to him, challenging him silently. He didn't respond, just shook his head and walked away, leaving the tension in the air. The past few years of our marriage had been smooth. Ethan managed a bustling local cafe. I worked as a software developer. Our routines were mundane but comforting, until yesterday. It all started when our doorbell buzzed while we were having dinner. Ethan went to answer it, and I heard a woman's voice, shaky but familiar. Moments later, Ethan walked into the dining room, his sister Lindsay trailing behind. Rachel, this is Lindsay, Ethan said softly, barely able to look me in the eye. She needs a place to stay for a while. Lindsay, whom I had only heard about in passing, stood there looking much older than her 35 years. Her eyes darted around, never settling on anything for too long. She held onto a large duffel bag, knuckles white from the grip. I forced a smile. Of course, Lindsay, make yourself comfortable. Hours later, Ethan and Lindsay were talking in the kitchen while I sat stiffly on the couch, pretending to watch a show. Their voices were hushed, but I could catch bits and pieces. Something about financial distress, emotional burnout. None of it felt right. So, how long do you think she's staying? I asked Ethan as we got ready for bed. Not sure, he responded, his voice tired. Just until she gets back on her feet. I nodded, turning off the bedside lamp. Something gnawed at me, a sense of unease I couldn't shake off. The next morning, our usual routine was disrupted. Lindsay was already in the kitchen, making herself at home. Good morning, Rachel, she greeted with an unsettlingly cheerful tone. Morning, Lindsay, I replied, putting on a neutral mask. I grabbed my coffee and headed to my office, giving Ethan a quick peck on the cheek. See you tonight. Work was my solace. The lines of code calmed my racing thoughts, but Lindsay's sudden appearance crept in now and then. Every time I tried to focus, the image of her standing limply at our doorstep popped into my mind. When I returned home, I found Ethan and Lindsay laughing over some old stories. They didn't notice me come in. The scent of dinner wafted through the air, but I felt no appetite. Anything I need to know about your sister's return? I asked Ethan later that night. He sighed heavily. Lindsay's been through a lot, job losses, a rough divorce. She just needs time. But why now? I pressed. Why not reach out sooner? Rachel, please, he almost pleaded. Just give her a chance. I closed my eyes, biting my lip. There was more to Lindsay's story, more than Ethan wanted to admit. I decided to keep a close eye on her. For now, I would play the supportive wife, but I knew I'd need to dig deeper. Lindsay was a storm brewing, and I could sense that she would disrupt the calm we had built. Over the next few days, my discomfort about Lindsay's presence only grew. Ethan's sister settled in like she had never left. I observed, my senses tuned to each interaction, every little change in the atmosphere of our home. Tensions were already simmering beneath the surface. One morning, I found Lindsay lounging on the sofa, remote in hand, feet propped up on the coffee table. Rachel, could you pass me some water? She asked, not even glancing away from the TV. I bit back a sharp retort, grabbed a glass of water, and handed it to her. Here, I said, my voice clipped. Thanks, she replied absent-mindedly. Ethan wasn't aware of these small moments. Whenever he was around, Lindsay transformed into the picture of humility, polite, and grateful. But when we were alone, a different side of her emerged. One evening, after dinner, Ethan had to rush back to the cafe to handle a staffing issue. Lindsay and I were left alone. I cleaned up, and she sat at the table flipping through a magazine. So, Rachel, have you thought about letting me borrow your car, just for a couple of days till I get things sorted? Lindsay asked, her tone casual but laced with expectation. I don't think that's a good idea, I replied, keeping my voice steady. We need it for work. Right, she said, smirking slightly. Ethan mentioned your job. A software developer, huh? Sounds demanding. It is, I said, sensing some form of judgment in her words. Must be nice, she added, not looking up. Having a stable job and all. I work hard for it, I countered, wiping the table a little too forcefully. I'm sure you do, she returned, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. Just don't be too harsh on Ethan. He's always been a bit naive, you know. My hands froze, but I didn't rise to the bait. I finished my task in silence, leaving her still seated at the table. That night, as Ethan and I climbed into bed, I could feel the invisible weight of an impending storm. Another argument flared between Ethan and me a few days later. Lindsay needs our support, he insisted, his patience wearing thin. It's not about support, I argued back. It's about boundaries. She's becoming a burden. She's my sister, Rachel. We can't just throw her out because she's inconvenient, he stated firmly. In the days that followed, Lindsay's behavior only became more problematic. She stayed up late, making noise that kept us awake. I'd find the kitchen a mess after she cooked. She seemed to have little regard for the home we had so carefully maintained. Ethan, you have to talk to her, I said one night, frustration boiling over. I will, I promise, he said, tiredly rubbing his temples. But I knew he wouldn't. His blind spot for his sister was too large. One particularly exhausting evening, after catching Lindsay rummaging through my belongings in our bedroom, I had to force myself to stay calm. What are you doing? I demanded. Just looking for some socks, she replied innocently, though her eyes told a different story. "We have a guest room for a reason, Lindsay. Please respect our space," I said, my voice hard. Lindsay didn't respond, just gave me a small smile that didn't reach her eyes and walked out. As I lay in bed that night, Ethan asleep beside me, I knew I needed to take action. Lindsay was becoming more than just a nuisance. She was a threat to the peace and stability of our home, and I wasn't going to let her tear everything apart. It was just a matter of how much more I could take before reaching my breaking point. The tension in the house was as sharp as a knife edge. Ethan was drifting away, drawn into Lindsay's world of manipulation. It was subtle at first, small remarks and suggestions, but over time it became clear Lindsay had a plan. One Saturday morning, Ethan sat down next to me with a sigh. "Rachel, Lindsay thinks she's overstaying her welcome," he began cautiously. "Does she?" I replied, folding my arms. "She suggested that maybe we could help her get back on her feet by giving her some financial help," he said, looking uneasy. "No, Ethan. She's been here for weeks, and all she's done is create chaos," I replied sharply. "She needs to show some initiative and find a job." Later, I overheard Lindsay talking to Ethan in the kitchen. "Ethan, I feel like a burden, but Rachel, she's being so cold," she said softly, sniffling as if she was on the verge of tears. "She's just stressed, Linz," Ethan replied, trying to console her. "I don't think she wants me here. I'll leave if that's what you both want," she said, sounding pitiful. Ethan hesitated. "No, we'll figure something out. Rachel just needs time." That evening, I found Lindsay rifling through our living room drawers. "What are you looking for, Lindsay?" I asked pointedly. "I was just trying to find a pen," she responded, a hint of defiance in her eyes. "Next time, ask," I said. She shrugged, the smirk playing on her lips, ever so slight, but I caught it. Dinner was a silent affair until Lindsay decided to stir the pot further. "You know, Ethan, I overheard some people at the cafe talking. They said Rachel spends a lot of time with her male colleagues after work," she said casually, setting her fork down and giving me a sideways glance. I felt the accusation like a slap. "Excuse me?" I snapped. "Oh, did I misunderstand?" "My mistake," she said, feigning innocence. Ethan looked troubled, his eyes darting between Lindsay and me. "Rachel, is there something I should know?" he asked, his voice low. "Seriously, Ethan, you're going to believe this nonsense?" I replied, my frustration hitting its peak. Lindsay's smirk returned. "I'm sorry. I must have misheard," she added, pouring fuel on the fire. After dinner, I cornered Ethan. "You know she's trying to turn you against me, right?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "She's just stressed, Rachel. She didn't mean it," he said, rubbing his forehead. "Open your eyes, Ethan. She's manipulating you." I shouted it without caring if Lindsay could hear. The argument spiraled, with me accusing and Ethan defending. Lindsay's presence in our home became the tipping point for constant stress and bickering between us. One evening, I returned home to find Lindsay sprawled on the couch, chatting on her phone. "Yeah, they're out of town this weekend," she said, her eyes meeting mine before quickly looking away. "Who are you talking to?" I demanded. She ended the call abruptly. "Just a friend," she said, standing up. "Just a friend? Or are you making plans behind our backs?" I shot back. "Calm down, Rachel. It's nothing," she replied, but there was a knowing glint in her eyes. That night, as I tried to sleep beside an oblivious Ethan, I knew I was reaching my limit. Her subtle digs, the way she wrapped Ethan around her finger, it all pushed me closer to the edge. The house had turned into a battleground, and I was out of patience. Time was running out, and something had to change. I couldn't sit back and let Lindsay poison our lives any longer. It was time to take control before she destroyed everything we had built. The breaking point came faster than I expected. I came home to find Lindsay seated at the dining table, Ethan nowhere in sight. She looked up with a sly smile. "Rachel, you're home early," she said, her voice tinged with mock surprise. Before I could respond, she added, "I was hoping we could talk." I dropped my bag, feeling the tension coil in my stomach. "What's there to talk about, Lindsay?" She leaned back, folding her arms. "I need money," she said bluntly. "A lot of it. I have debts that won't go away on their own." I stared at her, disbelief and rage mingling. "How much are you talking about?" "10,000 should do," she replied, her tone casual. "I promise I'll pay you back once I'm on my feet." "No way," I said, shaking my head. "That's out of the question." Lindsay's face hardened. "Ethan will do it if you won't," she said, eyes narrowing. And what makes you think he'll go behind my back? I challenged. She shrugged. You'd be surprised what a brother would do for his sister. At that moment, Ethan walked in, holding groceries. He looked between us, sensing the hostility. What's going on? Lindsay wants $10,000, I said, not taking my eyes off her. Ethan's face went pale. That's a lot of money, Linz. I need it, Ethan. Desperately. Lindsay pleaded, turning her gaze on him with those manipulative eyes. Would you really leave me stranded? Ethan, we can't. This has to stop, I said firmly. We'll figure something out, Lindsay, he told her, avoiding my gaze. I felt a wave of fury. Are you seriously considering this? Lindsay turned to me, her voice dripping with venom. You don't control him, Rachel. I grabbed my coat. We'll talk about this later, Ethan. I need some air. I stormed out, my mind racing. As I walked, I knew something had to change. Lindsay was tearing us apart, and Ethan was blind to it. Later, Ethan and I confronted each other in the kitchen. We can't keep going like this, I said, my voice raw. She needs to leave. Rachel, she's my sister, Ethan shouted, slamming his fist on the table. I can't just abandon her. Then maybe it's time to choose, I said quietly. Her or us? His eyes flashed with pain and indecision. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, Ethan. She's destroying our marriage. That night, I began digging into Lindsay's past. I called a friend who worked in finance, asking for any information on Lindsay's dealings. The results were shocking. Lindsay had been involved in several financial scams, always slipping away before being caught. Armed with this evidence, I knew I had to confront Ethan. As we sat down the following evening, I laid out what I'd found. I don't believe it, he said, shaking his head. Lindsay wouldn't do this. There's more, I pressed. She's been manipulating you for years. Look at the pattern. Ethan looked at the papers, his face crumbling. This can't be true. It is, I said gently. You need to see her for who she really is. Torn between his loyalty to his sister and the undeniable evidence before him, Ethan looked lost. What do we do? We need to confront her, I said. She can't stay here. Ethan nodded slowly, the weight of the truth settling in. We walked to the living room together, ready to face Lindsay and expose her deceit. This confrontation would be the turning point, one way or another. Ethan and I entered the living room, ready for the confrontation. Lindsay was scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the storm about to crash down on her. Lindsay, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady. Lindsay looked up, an eyebrow raised. What's this about? Ethan took a deep breath. Rachel found something out. We need to discuss it. About what? She asked, her face an image of manufactured innocence. I stepped forward, handing her the documents. Your financial history, the scams, the lies. Her eyes flicked over the pages. For a moment, her mask slipped, and fear flashed across her face. But she quickly recovered. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain. Enough, Lindsay, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I've been defending you, but these facts don't lie. You're really going to believe her over me? Lindsay shot back, eyes narrowing. Your own sister? Ethan's face contorted with pain. Why, Lindsay? Why did you do this? She dropped the documents and stood up, anger radiating from her. What choice did I have? You wouldn't understand. You've always had everything handed to you. That's not true, Ethan said, shaking his head. Lindsay's laugh was cold. Isn't it? Mom and Dad doted on you while I was left picking up the pieces. You owe me, Ethan. You owe me for all those years. No, Ethan said, with a newfound strength. I owe you nothing for your deceit. I stepped in. It's time for you to leave, Lindsay. You've overstayed your welcome and soured our home. You think you're so perfect, Lindsay spat, turning her fury on me. This isn't over. I held her gaze. Yes, it is. Pack your bags and leave. Ethan stood beside me, his resolve now hardened. She's right. It's time to go. Lindsay looked between us, realizing she had lost. She grabbed her bag, stuffing her belongings inside. You'll regret this, both of you, she said, her voice full of venom. We'll survive, Ethan replied, his voice steady. As she walked out the door, Lindsay turned one last time, her eyes flashing with hatred. I'll be back, she promised. Shh. Just go, I said, shutting the door behind her. The house felt lighter immediately, but the damage lingered in the air. Ethan slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. How did it go so wrong? I sat beside him, placing a hand on his back. We'll get through this, I said softly. We'll rebuild. He looked up, eyes filled with remorse. I should have seen it. I'm so sorry, Rachel. We both missed the signs, I acknowledged, but now we move forward. The next days were difficult. We had to confront the fallout of Lindsay's stay and the rift it had caused. Ethan and I avoided deep conversations, focusing on mundane tasks and routines. One morning, as we sat in silence over breakfast, Ethan spoke up. I think we need help. Counseling, maybe. I looked at him, recognizing the sincerity in his eyes. I agree, I said. We can't heal this alone. Taking his hand, we made the decision to seek professional help. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were committed to finding our way back to each other, repairing what Lindsay had tried to destroy. The therapist's office was a neutral haven, beige walls and soft lighting, creating a calming atmosphere. Dr. Sandra Green, our therapist, was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a steady demeanor. Ethan and I sat on the couch, feet almost touching but not quite. So what brings you both here today? Dr. Green asked, looking between us. Ethan took a deep breath. We need help. My sister Lindsay has caused a lot of turmoil in our marriage. We need to find a way to heal. Dr. Green nodded. Tell me about Lindsay and what happened. I shared the events of the past few weeks, from Lindsay's arrival to the discovery of her deceit. Dr. Green listened intently, making notes occasionally. When I finished, Ethan added, I feel guilty. I let her manipulate me, and it nearly ruined us. Dr. Green put down her pen. Let's focus on rebuilding trust. It's important to address the emotions you're both feeling. Through therapy sessions, we worked on our communication. We learned to express our feelings without anger and to listen without judgment. It was grueling, but I began to see glimpses of the bond we once had. One evening, after a particularly challenging session, Ethan and I sat in the living room, a comfortable silence between us. Thank you for sticking with this, he said quietly. I'm committed to us, Ethan. We can get through this, I replied, squeezing his hand. As the weeks passed, I found myself slowly letting go of the resentment I held towards Lindsay. However, one day, a phone call shattered our fragile peace. Ethan answered and immediately went pale. Lindsay, what do you want? He asked, his voice strained. I could hear her voice shrill and demanding through the phone. I need help, Ethan. I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. Ethan looked at me, conflicted. I shook my head firmly. No, Ethan. We can't go through this again. You heard Rachel. You can't drag us down anymore, he said into the phone. You can't do this to me, Lindsay screamed. I'm your sister. Lindsay, you need to sort out your own life. We're done, Ethan said, ending the call. He looked at me, anguish etched on his face. I feel terrible, but I know it's for the best. You did the right thing, I said, embracing him. She needs to learn to stand on her own. Days turned into weeks, and slowly our lives returned to a semblance of normal. Then, one evening, we received another call, this time from Ethan's old friend, Mark. Ethan, I hate to be the one to tell you, but Lindsay is in bad shape. She got mixed up with some dangerous people. Ethan's face went white. What do you mean? He asked, his voice trembling. She's been trying to con people and it backfired badly. She's looking for help, but honestly, I don't know how much anyone can do now. Ethan hung up the phone, sitting down heavily. This is what I was afraid of. I sat next to him. It's harsh, but Lindsay's choices led her here. We learned that Lindsay had been arrested, seeking help too late, entangled in a mess of her own making. Ethan and I watched, both saddened and relieved. As we continued our therapy, Dr. Green helped us focus on moving forward. You can't change the past, she said, but you can decide how it shapes your future. Ethan and I took her words to heart. We worked harder on our relationship, setting clear boundaries and learning to trust again. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, we grew stronger. While Lindsay's downfall was tragic, it became a catalyst for understanding and growth in our marriage. Together, we faced the shadows of betrayal and began crafting a new chapter, one built on the lessons we'd learned and the resilience we discovered within ourselves. Ethan and I walked into Dr. Green's office for what felt like the 100th time. Today felt different. There was a heaviness, the knowledge that we were on the brink of a major decision. Rachel, Ethan, how are you both? Dr. Green asked, her warm smile suggesting she already knew the complexity of our feelings. Confused, conflicted, I admitted, but we're here to figure it out. Ethan nodded. We need clarity. Dr. Green put her pen down. Let's talk about what you need from each other moving forward. I took a deep breath. I need to feel safe in our relationship, Ethan. No more surprises, no more manipulations from outside influences. Ethan reached for my hand. And I need to know you're with me, Rachel, through thick and thin. I squeezed his hand. Always, if it means we can rebuild trust. Dr. Green nodded approvingly. It sounds like you're ready to make some difficult choices. What about Lindsay's influence? This was the moment. I turned to Ethan. Lindsay can't be a part of our lives if we're going to heal. She needs to seek professional help. Ethan swallowed hard. He looked at me, anguish clear on his face, but eventually nodded. It's what we have to do. That evening, back at home, Ethan made the call. It was short and definitive. Lindsay, this is how it has to be. You need to get professional help. We can't be involved anymore. I watched him hang up, feeling both relief and sorrow. I hope she gets the help she needs, Ethan said wearily, sinking into the couch. We did everything we could, I reassured him. As the days turned into weeks, we focused on healing. Every morning, I would catch Ethan looking reflective, but he would also smile more easily. One Saturday morning, Ethan suggested, let's go for a walk, just the two of us. We walked hand in hand through a nearby park, the crisp autumn air invigorating us. I missed this, I admitted. Me too, Ethan said, squeezing my hand. We'll make new memories, Rachel, better ones. Our walks became a ritual, a way to reconnect and reaffirm our commitment to each other. One afternoon, we decided to visit Jamie, my close friend and confidant, who had been supportive through this ordeal. Come in, you guys. Jamie greeted us warmly, leading us into her cozy living room. How are things? She asked, genuine concern in her eyes. We're taking it one day at a time, I said honestly. Jamie gave a knowing nod. You've both been through the ringer. It's good to see you're working on it. We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a relief to be with friends who supported our journey. Later, when we were home, Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. I want us to keep growing, Rachel. No more shadows. Agreed, I said, feeling the weight of his words. No more shadows. We continued our sessions with Dr. Green, each one bringing us closer and helping us rebuild. We learned to trust again, not just in each other, but in our future. Eventually, we felt strong enough to talk about the next steps. We should consider renewing our vows, Ethan suggested one day. A fresh start. I smiled at the idea. I think that's a wonderful idea. As we stood in front of a small group of friends and family, reaffirming our commitment, I felt the weight lift completely. We had faced betrayal, confronted our deepest fears, and come out stronger. To new beginnings we toasted, clinking our glasses together. In that moment, I knew that the shadows of betrayal had finally lifted, giving way to the bright promise of a future we would build together, free from the darkness of the past. The fresh start Ethan and I had hoped for was beginning to take shape. We focused on our healing, attending couples therapy regularly, and working on our communication. Each passing day brought us a little closer. One afternoon, as we were heading to our therapy session, Ethan's phone rang. It was his old friend, Mark again. Ethan answered, his face growing tense as he listened. What's going on? I asked after he ended the call. Lindsay's in deeper trouble, Ethan said, his voice heavy. She tried to con someone, and they didn't take it well. She's in real danger, Rachel. I felt a pang of anger mixed with pity. What are we supposed to do about it? Ethan sighed. I don't know, but we can't go back to that chaos. She needs to face the consequences. We went through our therapy session, trying to stay focused, but I could see the worry etched on Ethan's face. Dr. Green noticed it too. Ethan, what's troubling you today? She asked gently. Lindsay's in trouble again, he admitted. I feel guilty for cutting her off, but I also know we can't help her anymore. Dr. Green nodded empathetically. It's natural to feel conflicted, but remember why you made that decision. You need to protect your own well-being. After the session, we walked in silence, each lost in our thoughts. Do you think she'll ever change? Ethan asked suddenly. I hope so, for her sake, I replied, squeezing his hand. But we've done all we can. A few days later, we received a call from the local police. Lindsay had been arrested again, this time for fraud. I watched as Ethan took the call, his face a mask of pain and resignation. Thank you, officer, he said before hanging up. Lindsay's being held on serious charges. I reached out, holding his hand. We have to let her face the music, Ethan. I know, he said, tears welling up, but it hurts. Time passed, and Lindsay's troubles remained a distant shadow. Ethan and I continued to strengthen our bond, finding joy in the simple things we once took for granted. We decided to attend a couples retreat recommended by Dr. Green. Welcome, everyone. The retreat facilitator greeted us warmly. This weekend is about reconnecting, rebuilding trust, and finding joy in your partnership. We participated in exercises designed to foster communication and understanding. One activity involved writing letters to each other, expressing our hopes and fears. Dear Ethan, I began, pouring my heart onto the paper. I admire your strength and your willingness to fight for us. We've faced so much, but I believe in our future together. When we exchanged letters, I saw tears in Ethan's eyes. Rachel, your words mean everything to me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Your letter is beautiful, Ethan, I replied, my own tears falling. By the end of the retreat, we felt more connected than ever. We stood on a hill overlooking a serene lake, holding hands as the sun set. This feels like a new beginning, Ethan said softly. It does, I agreed. We've come so far. Back home, the weeks turned into months, our relationship growing stronger. We began planning future projects together, talking about travel, hobbies, and even starting a family someday. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Ethan turned to me. I never thought we'd make it through all of this, he admitted. But we did, I said, smiling, and we're stronger for it. We received one final piece of news about Lindsay. She had finally checked herself into a rehabilitation program, facing the reality of her actions. Maybe this is the turning point she needs, Ethan said hopefully. Let's hope so, I replied, grateful for the closure. With each day, we moved forward, creating a future built on resilience and love. Together, we had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and ready for whatever lay ahead. As we looked toward the horizon, we knew that the shadows of betrayal had finally faded, leaving only the bright promise of new beginnings. She's nothing but a glorified maid with no education, Justin said, his voice dripping with disdain. My blood boiled instantly. I glanced around the dinner table, shocked by the cold words that shattered the air. Justin's parents, Evelyn and Richard, exchanged uneasy glances. They didn't try to hide their discomfort. Justin, that's enough, Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly. Well, it's the truth, Mom, he replied, shrugging as if it was the most natural statement in the world. Eva, you know I'm just being honest. I looked at him, my mind racing. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. His charming smile and tender gestures now seemed like a cruel facade. Is this really what you think of me? I asked, my voice barely steady. He leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. Come on, Eva, let's not make a scene. I'm sure they want to know who they're dealing with. I couldn't believe his audacity. After everything. I stopped myself, afraid my voice would crack. My heart pounded as I tried to maintain composure. I glanced at Evelyn and Richard, looking for any sign of support. Evelyn's eyes held regret, while Richard stared at his plate, seemingly lost for words. Justin's smirk was the final straw. I pushed back my chair and stood up, my hands trembling. Excuse me, I muttered, heading towards the front door. I needed fresh air. Needed to think. Eva, wait, Evelyn called after me. I paused, feeling her gentle hand on my shoulder. I don't know what Justin was thinking. Please, don't judge us by his words. He can be difficult. I looked at her, her eyes sincere. He's never talked to me like that before, I said. I don't know what to think. Give it time, dear, she said softly. These things have a way of sorting themselves out. I nodded weakly and stepped outside, the cool evening air hitting my face. I never imagined that the man I moved in with would turn out to be so condescending. His words echoed in my mind, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. Justin soon joined me on the porch, pretending everything was fine. You didn't have to leave, he said casually, as if dismissing the whole affair. I can't believe you said that, I replied, my voice quivering with suppressed anger. Do you really think so little of me? Eva, you need to understand something, he said, his tone shifting to one of mild irritation. My parents needed to know about your background. There's nothing wrong with being honest. I need some time alone, I said, cutting him off. I couldn't stand to hear any more. He raised his hands defensively. Fine, but don't be dramatic. I watched him walk back inside, the door closing softly behind him. I felt the weight of his words pressing down on me. This wasn't the first time I had felt his condescending attitude, but it had never been so blatant. I thought about my mother, Sharon, waiting at home for me. Her frail condition and need for constant care already wore heavily on my spirit. Justin's words cut deeper than he knew, hitting the raw nerves of my insecurities and fears. I thought I had found a partner, someone to build a life with, but tonight's events tore down that illusion. As I stood on the porch, the night air cooling my heated skin, I resolved not to let this define me. No matter how charming or successful Justin was, I had my dignity. I glanced back at the house one last time. This would not be the end, but a beginning. One way or another, I would find a way through this. "I'm out there saving lives while you flounder in mediocrity," Justin snarled as he tossed his keys on the kitchen counter. The sound of metal clanging echoed through the apartment, emphasizing his words. I froze, the dishcloth in my hand halfway to the sink. "Excuse me?" "You heard me, Eva," he said, rolling his eyes. "Do you know how tiring it is to come home to this mess after a 12-hour shift?" I glanced around the spotless kitchen. Nothing was out of place. "What mess?" I asked, exasperated. He stalked toward me, pointing a finger in my face. "Your life is a mess. Look at you, a high school dropout, waiting tables and cleaning houses. Do you think that's impressive?" My heart pounded as his words sank in. The man I fell in love with was nowhere to be seen. "I contribute to this household, too," I managed to say, my voice trembling with anger. Justin scoffed. "Barely. I cover most of the bills. What you make is peanuts." I clenched my fists, feeling the anger build up inside me, but I decided to stay calm. "I'm doing the best I can, Justin, and I'm also caring for my mom. That's not nothing." He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "Always your mother. You're drowning in mediocrity, and you drag me down with you." I turned away, blinking back tears. His words were like knives cutting deep. I could hear him behind me, the sound of his heavy breathing filling the room. "You know what?" I said, refusing to let him see me break down. "Maybe you'd be happier if I wasn't here." "Maybe I would," he spat out. "Or maybe you could actually try to better yourself." I planted my feet firmly on the ground, turning back to face him. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I once adored. "I thought we were partners," I said quietly. "But you see me as a burden." "Eva, open your eyes," he snapped. "Partners? Mutual respect? That's fantasy. Welcome to reality." The sting of his words left a bitter taste in my mouth. "I need some air," I said, brushing past him to the front door. I could feel his eyes burning into my back but didn't turn around. Out on the street, the cool night air felt like freedom. I tried to piece together how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. The charming, supportive man I met through the dating app was now nothing more than a controlling tyrant. As I walked, my mind drifted to the early days of our relationship, the sweet text messages, the late-night talks, and the promises that now felt hollow. I needed to talk to Sharon. The next afternoon, during one of my rare breaks, I visited her at the old family home. She lay on the couch, looking frail but cheerful. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to mask my stress with a smile. "Hey, sweetheart," she replied, patting the space beside her. I sat down, and she immediately noticed something was off. "Tell me what's wrong," she said. I sighed, leaning my head back against the couch. "It's Justin, Mom. He's changed, or maybe I'm just now seeing the real him." She frowned, her eyes filled with concern. "What happened?" "The way he talks to me," I began, pausing to find the right words without breaking down. "He treats me like I'm less than him, like I'm nothing." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're not nothing, Eva. You are strong, stronger than you know." Her words brought tears to my eyes, but I blinked them away. "Thanks, Mom. I needed that." We sat there in shared silence, her hand in mine. In that moment, I realized that whatever the future held, I had to be strong, for myself and for her. I would not let Justin's cruelty destroy my spirit. "Stop being so useless and get this house in order," Justin barked as he slammed the door behind him. The force of it sent a shiver through the apartment, like an earthquake had struck. Exhaustion turned into raw, seething anger inside me. I gripped the broom tighter, forcing myself not to snap. "I've been cleaning all day, and I still have to go take care of Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm as possible. He rolled his eyes. "Always an excuse with you, Eva. You think this is hard? Try doing what I do for even a day." "I'm doing my best," I replied, my voice shaking. Maybe if you could help once in a while. Help? Justin cut me off, laughing bitterly. I'm a surgeon. My time is worth 10 times what yours is. You should be grateful I even talked to you. My fists clenched so tightly around the broom that my knuckles turned white. I turned my back to him, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Taking a deep breath, I began sweeping furiously, each stroke a silent rebellion. You know, my colleagues laugh at me, he sneered. They can't believe I'm stuck with someone like you. His words stung like 1,000 paper cuts. Then why don't you just leave? I muttered under my breath, but loud enough for him to hear. He stormed over, yanking the broom from my hands and tossing it aside. Because, Eva, you need me. You need my money, my status. Without me, you're nothing. I looked up at him, my defiance bubbling to the surface. I don't need you, Justin. I won't be treated like garbage just because you have a fancy title. He stepped closer, invading my space, his eyes narrowing. Without me, you'd be on the streets. Remember that next time you think about mouthing off. The ringing of my phone interrupted the tension. I grabbed it from the counter and saw my mother's number. Relief washed over me, an escape from this prison, albeit temporary. I have to go, I said, brushing past Justin. My mom needs me. Just get out, he hissed, waving me off. Barely worth my time. I walked out the door, his words echoing behind me like a dark cloud. The drive to my mother's was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. How had things turned so sour so quickly? When I arrived at my mother's house, Sharon was struggling to reach something from the top shelf in the kitchen. Hey, Mom, I said, rushing to help her. You should have called me. Thanks, sweetheart, she said, her smile warm but tinged with fatigue. I forced a smile. I'm fine, just busy. How are you feeling today? She sat down at the kitchen table, cradling a cup of tea. I'm okay, but you seem upset. What happened? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words choked in my throat. It's just Justin, I managed to say. He's being impossible again. Her eyes filled with worry. Eva, you don't have to put up with that. You deserve better. I know, Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But it's complicated. I need to figure out how to handle this. Later that night, I found myself back at the apartment, dreading the confrontation that awaited me. Justin was in bed, his back turned to me, clearly uninterested in any kind of reconciliation. I lay down beside him, staring at the ceiling. My mind was made up. I couldn't continue like this. I needed to find out who he really was. If there were secrets, I would uncover them, and then I would make him pay for every degrading word, every humiliating moment. My resolve hardened, fueling a sense of determination I didn't know I had. I would gather the evidence, plan my move, and expose the man who thought he could treat people like disposable objects. Justin was about to learn that even someone floundering in mediocrity could fight back and win. This isn't just him being mean. This is criminal, I whispered to myself, staring at Justin's laptop screen. The encrypted emails I had decrypted slowly revealed a web of illegal activities that made my skin crawl. I quickly photographed the damning emails with my phone, my hands shaking. I had found everything from organ trafficking deals to bribery transactions. The charming surgeon was nothing more than a dangerous criminal. The front door opened and my heart skipped a beat. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it back into its hiding place just as Justin walked into the room. Eva, he called out, his voice unusually cheerful. What's for dinner? I ordered takeout, I said, forcing a smile, trying to hide the adrenaline coursing through me. He looked at me suspiciously. Why are you acting so weird? Weird, I echoed, my voice steady. I'm just tired, Justin. It's been a long day. He eyed me for a moment before shrugging. Whatever. Make sure you set the table. As I set the table, my mind raced. What would my next move be? But for now, I had to play it cool. I couldn't let him suspect a thing. Later that week, as Justin continued his usual night shifts, I became more meticulous in gathering evidence. I copied files, took photos of documents, and even recorded some of our conversations. The more I uncovered, the more revolted I felt. During one of our dinners, Justin dropped another bomb. I've invited my parents over this weekend, he said casually between bites. We'll have a little family gathering. You can show my mother how useful you can be by preparing everything. I bit back the resentful reply that bubbled up. Sure, Justin, I'll take care of it. As the weekend approached, I prepared meticulously. But not just for the gathering. It was time to turn the tables. When his parents arrived, I greeted them warmly, my heart pounding with anticipation. Evelyn smiled and embraced me, but Richard's stern face showed he wasn't convinced by the domestic facade. The dinner conversation started light, filled with polite chit-chat. I served the meal, trying to time everything perfectly. My pulse quickened as the conversation shifted. "Justin, how's work been lately?" Richard asked, his tone neutral. "Busy as always, Dad," Justin replied, beaming with pride. "Saving lives every day." I almost choked on my drink. The hypocrisy was unbearable, but I held my tongue. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. As the evening wore on, Justin's arrogance grew. Finally, he made a comment that made my blood boil. "You know," he said, glancing at me, "it's hard to balance such an important career with someone who barely contributes." That was it. I couldn't take any more. "Actually, Justin," I said, my voice steady, "I think it's time your parents knew the whole truth." Evelyn looked alarmed, and Richard's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about, Eva?" Justin asked, his voice low and threatening. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. "I found these on your laptop. Care to explain?" His face paled as the images of the incriminating emails flashed on the screen. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth, while Richard's face turned red with fury. "What is this, Justin?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. Justin stammered, trying to come up with a lie, but the evidence was overwhelming. "It's not what it looks like," he pleaded. But the room had already turned against him. Richard stood up, his face stern. "Is this true, Justin? Have you been involved in illegal activities?" Justin's silence spoke volumes. Evelyn burst into tears, and Richard's eyes filled with disappointed anger. How could you? The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. I felt a surge of vindication, knowing that the truth was finally out in the open. Justin's world was about to crumble, and I was ready for the fallout. "You think your title gives you power over me? Over anyone?" I stated, my calm voice slicing through the tension-filled room like a knife. Justin's parents were still digesting the images on my phone. Evelyn's tear-streaked face looked shattered, while Richard appeared as if he might burst from anger. But none of that mattered now. "Eva, you better watch your mouth," Justin snarled, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and rage. "Enough is enough. Time to turn the tables," I said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "You've treated me like dirt for too long, and now everyone will see who you really are." Justin lunged towards me, but Richard stepped in. "You stay right where you are," he bellowed, his face inches from Justin's. "Have you lost your mind, son?" "Dad, it's not what it looks like," Justin tried to explain, his voice lacking the confidence it usually held. He looked cornered like a trapped animal. Evelyn sobbed quietly, her body shaking. "Justin, how could you? We raised you better than this." Justin's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "Eva, get out, now," he growled, trying to regain control. "No," I replied firmly. "I'm not leaving. You are the one who will face the consequences." Richard turned to me, his voice softer but firm. "Eva, I'm sorry for what you've been through, but we need to get to the bottom of this." I nodded, taking a step back to let the conversation unfold. Justin's face looked strained, the facade of the charming doctor cracking at the edges. "Justin, you must come clean," Richard insisted, his stern judicial tone leaving no room for debate. "You don't understand, Dad," Justin said, floundering. "I did it to help people. These organ trades saved lives." Evelyn gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Justin, that's illegal. You risked everything, everyone, for money?" Justin's face flushed with a mix of anger and shame. "It's not just about the money, Mom. It's complicated." "Complicated?" Evelyn cried out. "This is criminal." The room grew silent for a moment, the weight of what had been said hanging in the air like a dark storm cloud. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. Finally, Justin was facing the consequences for his actions. Richard shook his head, looking his son dead in the eye. "You need to turn yourself in. It's the only way to atone for what you've done." Justin's face turned pale, and he took a step back. "Dad, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Richard said, his voice firm. "If you don't, I will." Justin's eyes widened in desperation. He turned to me, his expression a mix of hatred and pleading. "Eva, please, don't do this." I held my ground, meeting his gaze with unyielding resolve. "This isn't about revenge anymore, Justin. This is about right and wrong." Evelyn stood and placed a hand on Justin's arm, tears streaming down her face. Justin, we love you, but you must take responsibility for your actions. Traitor, Justin's eyes screamed at me, but his lips remained pressed in a thin line. He turned towards his father, defeated. Fine, if that's what it takes. Richard pulled out his phone and dialed quickly, each number a final nail in the coffin of Justin's charade. I'm calling our attorney. We're going to sort this out legally. As Richard's voice echoed through the room, making arrangements, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. This was just the beginning, but at least the truth was out. I watched as Justin stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. The man who had once controlled me was now facing the collapse of everything he held dear. For once, I felt hope for justice, for my mother, and for myself. My future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would not be a victim any longer. Is this true, Justin? Have you been trading lives for money? Evelyn's voice trembled with disbelief as she clutched her son's arm. The dining room felt like a courtroom. Justin stood there, cornered and pale, his eyes cast downward. Mom, he stammered, searching for words that wouldn't come. The truth finally out in the open, I thought, feeling a surge of vindication. It's all true, I stated, my voice clear. Justin's been involved in illegal organ trafficking and bribery. I have all the evidence. Richard hung up the phone. The attorney is on his way. Until then, Justin, you need to start explaining yourself. Justin flinched. Dad, it's more complicated than you think. I didn't have a choice. Choice? You always have a choice, Richard fired back, and you chose crime. Evelyn sobbed quietly, holding her forehead. This can't be happening. How could you do this to your patients, to us? Justin clenched his fists, his facade of control entirely shattered. It wasn't just for money, he said, his voice hollow. Some of these people were desperate. Lives were saved. And how many lives were ruined? I retorted, locking eyes with him. You think your good intentions justify breaking the law? Exploiting people? Richard raised a hand. Eva's right. Whatever your reasoning, it doesn't excuse this. Justin's gaze shifted around the room, looking for an ally, but finding none. Dad, Mom, please, I can make this right. Just give me a chance. No, Justin, Richard said quietly. You must take responsibility for this. Our family name is at stake, and more importantly, you need to atone for your actions. A tense silence filled the room as Justin seemed to crumple under the weight of his father's words. It was strange seeing this once powerful man now cornered and vulnerable. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Richard glanced at me, nodding for confirmation. That must be the attorney. I opened the door to find not just the family attorney, but also a police officer standing beside him. Wordlessly, I stepped back to let them in. Richard, the attorney said, shaking hands and nodding solemnly at Evelyn. I've briefed the officer about the situation. Justin's eyes widened in panic. Dad, you called the police? I had to, Richard said firmly, though his voice softened slightly. It's the right thing to do. The officer stepped forward. Justin Parker, you're under arrest for your involvement in illegal organ trafficking and bribery. You have the right to remain silent. Justin looked at his parents one last time, desperation in his eyes. Please, help me. Evelyn's tears flowed freely, but she said nothing. Richard sighed deeply. We'll get you a lawyer, Justin, but you must face the consequences. As the officer pulled out the handcuffs, Justin didn't resist. His eyes found mine, pleading silently, but I felt no pity. This was justice. I'm done being your victim, Justin. Now, the world knows who you really are, I said quietly, feeling the weight of the last few months lift off my shoulders. As they led Justin away, Evelyn collapsed into Richard's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He held her, his face a mix of heartbreak and resolve. You did the right thing, Richard said, looking at me. No one should have to live in fear or be treated like that. Thank you for your courage. I nodded, unable to form words. Justice was messy, and hearts were broken, but it was a necessary step. I had exposed the truth, and in doing so had freed myself from Justin's cruel grip. Outside, as the police car pulled away, I watched with a strange sense of peace. Justin had been powerful and ruthless, but now he was simply a man facing the consequences of his actions. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. The media frenzy hit like a hurricane the day after Justin's arrest. Reporters swarmed our apartment building, their cameras flashing as they peppered me with questions. Eva, how long did you know? What did you uncover? How do you feel now that it's all out in the open? I'm done being your victim, Justin. Now the world knows who you really are, I had said, and it was now more true than ever. As I looked at the chaos around me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Justice would be served, even if it was a messy process. A police officer managed to clear a path for me. Eva Hall, Detective Mills would like to speak with you. Thank you, I replied, following the officer to an unmarked car parked discreetly around the corner. Detective Sarah Mills was waiting inside, her expression unreadable. She motioned for me to sit. Eva, I need to hear everything from the beginning. What you found, how you found it, all of it. I took a seat, my heart still pounding from the chaos outside. I found Justin's emails, I began. He'd been encrypting messages about illegal organ trades and bribes. I took photos of everything. Detective Mills nodded. We've reviewed the evidence you provided and begun our investigation. Thanks to you, we're already making progress on tracking down his accomplices. A sense of relief washed over me. What happens now? Now we gather more evidence and prepare the case against him. It's going to be a long process, Eva. Are you ready for that? I took a deep breath. Yes, I'm ready. I've come this far. I won't back down now. Detective Mills smiled faintly. Good. You've done an incredible thing, Eva. Not many people would have had the courage to do what you did. I nodded, determined. Thank you, Detective. We spent the next few hours going over the details, piece by piece. It was exhausting, reliving each painful discovery, but I knew it was necessary. By the time we finished, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the chaotic scene outside. Finally, outside, I glanced at the dispersing crowd of reporters, realizing it was time to reclaim my life. I walked back to our apartment, every step solidifying my resolve. That evening, I called my mom. Hey, Mom, it's over. Justin's been arrested. Her relief was palpable. I'm so proud of you, Eva. You've been so strong. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, my voice breaking a little. It's been hard, but it was worth it. Come home, sweetheart, she replied, her voice warm. We can start over together. I'll be there soon, Mom. As I packed up my belongings, the emptiness of the apartment struck me. This place, once filled with promise and love, now held only bitter memories and broken dreams. I had to leave it all behind to truly move forward. The next morning, I woke up early, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. I looked around the apartment one last time before stepping out the door with my bags. Outside, the air was crisp, and the world seemed strangely quiet without the buzz of media frenzy. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm done being your victim, Justin, I whispered to myself as I walked to my car. Now, it's time to live my life. As I drove away, the city skyline faded into the distance, along with the chaos that had consumed my life for so long. There was a long road ahead, full of uncertainty and challenges, but for the first time, I felt ready to face it. I arrived at my mom's place, a sense of peace filling me as she welcomed me with open arms. I hugged her tightly, knowing that together we could rebuild our lives. This was just the beginning. Justice had been served, and now it was time to find a new path, one filled with hope, strength, and a future I could finally control. Freedom tastes a little bittersweet, but it's mine, I thought, standing in the doorway of my mother's house. A wave of calm washed over me, something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Eva, come inside, Mom called, her voice warm and comforting. Dinner's almost ready. Walking into the kitchen, I was struck by how different this felt compared to the cold, tense atmosphere of the apartment I had shared with Justin. Here, everything smelled of home, of safety and love. How are you holding up? Mom asked, setting a pot of soup on the table. Better, I said, helping her set the table. It's strange, but I feel like I can breathe again. She smiled, wrapping me in a hug. We'll get through this together. I felt a sudden swell of gratitude for her support. Thanks, Mom, for everything. Over the next few weeks, life began to take on a new rhythm. I found part-time work at a local cafe, much less stressful than the multiple jobs I juggled before. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to care for Mom. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Evelyn. Eva, I wanted to apologize for everything. We had no idea what Justin was capable of. Thank you, Evelyn, I replied, surprised by her call. I'm just glad the truth is finally out. We'd like to help if you'll let us, she continued. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need. I hesitated. Accepting their help felt complicated, yet I knew it would make things easier. I appreciate it. Let's take it one step at a time. Days turned into weeks, and I visited Justin's parents occasionally. Despite everything, they offered genuine support, wanting to right the wrongs their son had committed. Evelyn even helped care for Mom sometimes, her presence a comfort we hadn't expected. One evening, Richard showed up with a somber expression. "Eva, I wanted to tell you that we've arranged a fund for you and Sharon. It's the least we can do." Tears welled up in my eyes. This gesture overwhelmed me. "Thank you, Richard. This means more than you know." He nodded, his face reflecting the weight of his own family's crisis. "We owe it to you." Despite the challenges, a sense of justice and closure began to fill the void left by Justin's abuse. With each contribution from Evelyn and Richard, our lives became a little less burdened. It was a strange alliance forged out of mutual tragedy and need for forgiveness. One night, as I tucked Mom into bed, she grabbed my hand. "I'm so proud of you, Eva. You've done so much for us." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Thanks, Mom. I just want us to be happy." The news covered Justin's court trial extensively. Watching from our living room, I saw him being sentenced. There he was, the man who had tried to tear me down, now paying for his crimes. Freedom indeed tasted bittersweet, but justice was powerful. As days turned into months, I found strength I never knew I had. My job at the cafe became more stable, providing a steady income that allowed me more time with Mom. Her health remained fragile, but our bond grew deeper every day. Evelyn and Richard's continued support transformed from financial help to genuine friendship. We had become unlikely allies in the aftermath of a shared catastrophe. One weekend, as I sat with Mom on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze, she looked at me with a smile. "What do you see for your future, Eva?" I paused, considering her question. "I'm not sure yet, but for now I see us together, happy and free from the past." She nodded, her eyes reflecting pride. "That sounds just right to me." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The broken promise from my past had led me to a new beginning, one filled with resilience, determination, and love. And for the first time, I could truly see a brighter future. A future that was mine to build, step by step. I stared at the glowing screen of Adam's phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The message from Claire blinked innocently, but its contents were anything but. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place." My fingers trembled as I set the phone back on the nightstand. Adam's soft snores filled our bedroom, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I slipped out of bed, padding quietly to the kitchen of our cramped apartment. The clock on the microwave read 2:17 a.m. I gripped the edge of the counter, willing my breathing to slow. This had to be a mistake. There had to be an explanation. "Em?" Adam's sleepy voice startled me. "What are you doing up?" I turned, forcing a smile. "Just getting some water. Go back to sleep." He yawned, running a hand through his tousled hair. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Really?" Adam shrugged, shuffling back to bed. I watched him go, my mind racing. Should I confront him now? Demand answers? Or wait and see what happened? The next morning, I went through the motions of getting ready for work. Adam kissed me goodbye, same as always. "Have a great day, hon." "Love you." "Love you too," I echoed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. At the nonprofit where I worked, I couldn't focus. My coworker, Jen, noticed immediately. "Emily, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I hesitated, then spilled everything. Jen's eyes widened as I told her about the text. "Oh, sweetie," she said, squeezing my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to follow him, see where he goes, but that feels wrong." Jen shook her head. "No, you need answers. If he's cheating, you deserve to know." The rest of the day crawled by. When 5 o'clock finally arrived, I raced to my car. Adam usually got home around 6:30. I had time. I parked down the street from our apartment, my stomach in knots. At 6:15, Adam's car pulled up, but instead of going inside, he walked to the corner and hailed a cab. My hands shook as I started the engine, following at a safe distance. We wound through the city until the cab stopped outside a trendy bar downtown. I watched, bile rising in my throat as Adam strode inside. 5 minutes later, a pretty blonde woman arrived. She glanced around before entering the bar. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled for my phone. I snapped a picture just as the woman disappeared inside. "Oh, Adam," I whispered. "How could you?" I don't know how long I sat there, numb with shock and betrayal. My phone buzzed, a text from Adam. "Working late tonight, babe. Don't wait up." Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. I started the car, my mind made up. No more lies, no more excuses. As I pulled into our parking lot, my phone rang. It was Adam's mother, Lily. "Emily, dear." Her syrupy voice grated on my nerves. "I was thinking of stopping by tomorrow. Adam mentioned you two might be ready to start looking at houses. I have some ideas." "Now's not a good time, Lily," I cut her off. "I'll have to call you back." I ended the call, ignoring her protests. Taking a deep breath, I marched up to our apartment. It was time for a reckoning. The lights were off when I entered. I flicked them on, revealing the shabby furniture and peeling wallpaper. How had I let Lily convince us this dump was all we could afford? I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and began throwing Adam's clothes inside. Each item fueled my rage. By the time I heard his key in the lock, I was ready. Adam stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He froze when he saw me. "Em, what's going on?" I met his confused gaze, my voice steady. "I think it's time we had a talk, Adam, about Claire." 3 months had passed since that fateful night. Adam swore it was a one-time mistake, begged for forgiveness. Like a fool, I believed him. Now, as I stared at our dwindling bank account, I wondered if I'd made the right choice. "Em, did you hear what I said?" Adam's voice snapped me back to reality. We sat at our rickety kitchen table, bills spread before us. "Sorry, what?" he sighed, exasperated. "I said, Mom thinks we should look at that new condo development downtown." I blinked, stunned. "Adam, we can barely afford this place. How could we possibly—" "Mom says she'll help with the down payment," he interrupted. "She thinks it's a great investment." Of course she did. Lily always had an opinion on our finances, our careers, our entire lives. I bit back a retort, trying to stay calm. "That's generous, but I'm not comfortable taking money from your mother." Adam's face darkened. "Why not? She's just trying to help." "Help control us, you mean?" I muttered. "What was that?" I forced a smile. "Nothing. Look, can we talk about this later? I have to get ready for work." As I gathered my things, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom, "Dinner this weekend?" Before I could reply, Adam appeared behind me. "Who's that?" "Just my mom," I said, pocketing the phone. "She wants to have dinner." Adam frowned. "This weekend? But we're supposed to look at condos with my mother." I stared at him, incredulous. "When did we decide that?" "I told you last night," he insisted. You must not have been listening. The argument that followed was brief but intense. In the end, I caved. Again. "Fine," I snapped. "Tell your mother we'll go." At work, I couldn't focus. Jen found me hiding in the supply closet, fighting back tears. "Oh, honey," she said, pulling me into a hug. "What happened?" I spilled everything, the condo, Lily's interference, Adam's attitude. Jen listened, her expression growing more concerned. "Emily," she said gently, "are you sure this is what you want? You seem so unhappy." I wiped my eyes, straightening my shoulders. "It's just a rough patch. We'll get through it." But as the weekend approached, my anxiety skyrocketed. At a Saturday morning, I found myself trailing behind Adam and Lily as they toured a sleek, modern condo. "Isn't it perfect?" Lily gushed, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the granite countertop. "Adam, darling, this is exactly what you need." I bristled at her words. What Adam needed, not what we needed. The realtor, a perky blonde named Sarah, turned to me. "What do you think, Mrs. Thompson? Can you see yourself living here?" Before I could answer, Lily cut in. "Oh, she loves it. Don't you, Emily?" I forced a smile, my hands clenched at my sides. "It's nice." Adam shot me a warning look. I knew that look. It meant, don't start anything. As Sarah led us to the master bedroom, my phone vibrated. A text from my dad. "Everything okay, sweetie? Haven't heard from you in a while." Guilt washed over me. I'd been so caught up in this condo nightmare I'd neglected my own parents. "Emily!" Lily's sharp voice made me jump. "Put that phone away. This is important." I looked up to see all three of them staring at me. Lily annoyed, Adam embarrassed, Sarah confused. Something inside me snapped. "You know what?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need some air." I turned and walked out, ignoring Adam's calls. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, trembling. What was I doing? This wasn't the life I wanted. This wasn't the marriage I dreamed of. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from our joint bank account. A large transfer had just been made, the down payment for the condo. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with tears. Adam had done it, without even asking me. As I heard their footsteps approaching, I made a decision. It was time to stand up for myself, time to fight for the life I deserved. Taking a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and prepared for the confrontation that was about to come. The condo felt like a gilded cage. 2 weeks after moving in, I found myself staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows, longing for our old, cramped apartment. At least there, I'd felt at home. The sound of a key in the lock made me tense. Adam or Lily? These days it was hard to tell who'd come barging in uninvited. "Emily, darling." Lily's shrill voice echoed through the space. "Where are you?" I plastered on a smile and turned to face my mother-in-law. "Hi, Lily. I didn't know you were coming over." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Oh, I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd drop by and see how you're settling in." Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the living room. "You haven't unpacked everything yet?" I bit back a retort. "We've been busy with work. It's a process." Lily clicked her tongue. "Well, we can't have that. I'll call my interior decorator. She'll have this place looking fabulous in no time." "That's really not necessary." "Nonsense," Lily interrupted. "It's the least I can do. After all, I helped you get this lovely home." The way she emphasized helped made my skin crawl, as if we were children who couldn't manage on our own. "Actually, Lily," I said, finding my voice, "Adam and I were thinking of decorating ourselves. Make it our own, you know?" Lily's smile tightened. "Oh, sweetie, that's adorable. But let's leave it to the professionals, shall we? We wouldn't want it looking cheap." Before I could respond, she was on her phone, chattering away to her decorator. I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I poured myself a glass of water. This was supposed to be our fresh start, our chance to rebuild after Adam's indiscretion. Instead, it felt like Lily was taking over our lives more than ever. The front door opened again, and Adam's voice drifted in. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I stayed in the kitchen, listening to their muffled conversation. When Adam finally appeared, he looked sheepish. "Hey, Em. Sorry about this. You know how Mom gets." I set down my glass, harder than necessary. "Yeah, I do. The question is, why do you let her?" Adam's face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm tired of your mother making decisions for us." I snapped. "This is our home, Adam. Ours, not hers. She's just trying to help," he argued. "Why can't you be grateful?" "Grateful?" I laughed bitterly. "For what? For undermining every choice we make? For treating me like I'm not good enough for her precious son?" Adam's jaw clenched. "That's not fair. Mom loves you." "No, Adam, she loves controlling you, and by extension, me." Our raised voices must have carried, because suddenly Lily appeared in the doorway. "Is everything all right in here?" I opened my mouth to speak, but Adam cut me off. "It's fine, Mom. Just a little disagreement about decorating." Lily's eyes gleamed with interest. "Oh, well, I'm sure we can sort that out. Emily, dear, why don't you tell me your ideas? I'm sure we can find a compromise." The condescension in her tone was the last straw. "You know what, Lily? I don't want to compromise. This is my home, mine and Adam's, not yours." The room fell silent. Adam looked horrified, while Lily's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Well," she said, her voice dangerously low, "I see someone's forgotten their manners. Adam, are you going to let her speak to me like that?" I turned to my husband, silently pleading with him to stand up for me, for us. But as I watched the conflict play out on his face, I knew he would choose her. He always did. "Em," he said softly, "maybe you should apologize." In that moment, something inside me broke. This beautiful condo, this fresh start, it was all a lie. Nothing had changed. Nothing ever would. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "I need some air," I muttered. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard Lily's voice behind me. "Really, Adam, I don't know why you put up with her attitude." The elevator doors closed on Adam's reply, and I leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. I'd thought moving here would fix things. Instead, it had only made everything worse. As the elevator descended, I realized I had a choice to make. Stay and fight for a marriage that was slipping away, or find the strength to walk away and reclaim my life. The doors opened, and I stepped out into the sunlight, unsure of where to go, but knowing I couldn't stay here any longer. I sat in my parents' cozy living room, clutching a mug of tea, trying to find the words to explain the mess my life had become. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances as I recounted the latest drama with Lily and Adam. "Oh, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." Dad's face was a storm cloud. "That woman has no right to treat you this way. And Adam, he needs to grow a spine." I nodded, fighting back tears. "I just don't know what to do anymore. It's like I'm losing myself in their world." The sharp trill of my phone cut through the moment. Adam's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Em, where are you?" His voice was tight with tension. "Mom's been trying to reach you all day." I bit back sarcastic reply. "I'm at my parents'. I needed some space." "Space?" Adam sounded incredulous. "We have that dinner with my boss tonight. You knew that." "The dinner. I'd completely forgotten." "I'm sorry, Just get home," he interrupted. "Mom's already here to help you get ready." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, a knot forming in my stomach. "Everything okay?" Dad asked, his brow furrowed with concern. I stood, gathering my things. "I have to go. There's this work dinner for Adam." Mom frowned. "Emily, honey, maybe you should stay here tonight. You seem exhausted." Part of me wanted nothing more than to curl up in my childhood bedroom and forget the world, but I knew the fallout wouldn't be worth it. "I'll be fine," I assured them, forcing a smile. "I'll call you tomorrow." The drive home felt like a march to the gallows. As I entered the condo, Lily's voice hit me like a physical force. "There you are," she exclaimed, rushing over. "Honestly, Emily, how could you be so irresponsible, running off like that when you knew how important tonight is?" I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Adam cut in. "It doesn't matter now. She's here. Let's just get ready." Lily clucked her tongue, eyeing me critically. "Well, we'll have to work quickly. I've laid out a dress for you. Go shower, and I'll do your makeup." For a moment, I considered turning around and walking right back out the door. But Adam's pleading look stopped me. "Please, Em, this dinner could mean a big promotion." Defeated, I nodded and headed for the bathroom. As the hot water washed over me, I tried to steel myself for the evening ahead. An hour later, I stood before the mirror, barely recognizing myself. The dress Lily had chosen was tight and low-cut, nothing like my usual style. My face felt heavy with makeup. "Perfect," Lily beamed, adjusting my hair. "Now you look like a proper executive's wife." The words stung more than they should have. Is that all I was now? An accessory to Adam's career? As we prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Hope you're okay, sweetie. We're always here if you need us." A lump formed in my throat. I started to type a reply, but Lily's sharp voice interrupted. "Emily, phone away. It's time to go." I looked up to see Adam already halfway out the door, Lily hovering impatiently behind him. Neither of them seemed to notice or care about my discomfort. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I thought about my parents' warm concern, contrasted with the cold expectations surrounding me now. I thought about the woman I used to be, confident, independent, and the shell I'd become. "Actually," I heard myself say, my voice stronger than I expected, "I don't think I'll be joining you tonight." Adam froze, turning slowly to face me. "What?" Lily's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Don't be ridiculous. Of course you're coming." I stood my ground, heart pounding. "No, I'm not. And I think it's time we had a serious talk about our future, Adam. All of us." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched emotions flicker across Adam's face. Confusion, anger, and finally, fear. He knew, as well as I did, that this was a turning point. Whatever happened next would change everything. The tension in the room was palpable as Adam, Lily, and I faced each other. I'd changed out of the tight dress, back into my comfortable jeans and sweater, feeling more like myself. "Emily," Adam began, his voice strained. "What's this all about? We're going to be late." I took a deep breath. "We need to talk about us, Adam, about our future." Lily scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're jeopardizing Adam's career over what? A little family disagreement?" "It's not little," I countered, my voice stronger than I felt. "It's our life, and I'm tired of feeling like I don't have a say in it." Adam's face softened slightly. "Em, I know things have been tough, but—" "Tough?" I laughed bitterly. "Adam, I feel like I'm disappearing, like everything that makes me who I am is being erased." Lily stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "Now you listen here, young lady. Adam has given you a beautiful home, a comfortable life, and this is how you repay him?" "Mom," Adam warned, but she was on a roll. "You should be grateful. Instead, you're throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child." "What about your parents, Emily? Did they put these ideas in your head? The mention of my parents was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Leave them out of this, I snapped. They've done nothing but support us. Support? Lily sneered. They're holding you back. Adam, tell her. Tell her how her parents are dragging you down. I turned to Adam, shock and hurt coursing through me. What is she talking about? Adam shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing, Em. Just some things Mom and I discussed. What things? I demanded. Lily jumped in, about how your parents are always asking for help, how they're a financial burden. Adam agrees it's time to cut ties. The room spun. I stared at Adam, silently begging him to deny it, but his silence spoke volumes. You, I whispered, my voice breaking. You want to cut my parents out of our lives? Em, it's not like that, Adam pleaded. We just think it might be best if we focused on our future, on building our own family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents have never asked us for anything. They've only ever tried to help. Help? Lily scoffed. By filling your head with nonsense about independence and following your dreams? Please. It's time you grew up, Emily. I turned to Adam, tears stinging my eyes. And you agree with this? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I think Mom has a point, Em. We need to start putting ourselves first. In that moment, something inside me shattered. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, was siding with his mother over me, over my family. I see, I said, my voice eerily calm. Well then, I guess I know where I stand. I moved towards the bedroom, but Adam caught my arm. Em, wait, where are you going? I shook off his grip. I'm packing a bag. I can't stay here tonight, maybe not ever. Don't be dramatic, Lily snapped. Adam, tell her she's being ridiculous. But Adam just stood there, conflict etched across his face. Em, please, we can work this out. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. A man so entangled in his mother's web that he couldn't see the damage he was causing. Can we? I asked softly. Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you've already made your choice. I turned and walked into the bedroom, my heart pounding. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I heard Lily's shrill voice and Adam's muffled responses. But I tuned them out, focusing on the task at hand. When I emerged with my bag, Adam was alone, Lily having finally left for the dinner. Emily, he said, his voice breaking. Please don't go. I met his gaze, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. I have to, Adam. I need time to think, to figure out if there's anything left to save here. As I reached for the door, Adam called out one last time. I love you, Em. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I love you too, Adam, but right now, that's not enough. With that, I stepped out into the hallway, closing the door on the life I'd known. As I rode the elevator down, I realized I was facing a crossroads. Stay and fight for a marriage that was crumbling, or leave and rediscover the woman I used to be. The choice, I knew, would change everything. 2 weeks had passed since I'd walked out of the condo. 2 weeks of soul-searching, of rediscovering who I was without Adam's shadow looming over me. I'd been staying with my parents, their unwavering support a balm to my battered spirit. But it was time. Time to face the music, to decide once and for all if my marriage was worth saving. I stood outside the condo door, key in hand, heart pounding. Adam's texts had been a mixture of apologies and pleas over the past fortnight. Part of me hoped that this separation had been a wake-up call for him. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the silence. No TV blaring, no Lily's shrill voice offering unsolicited advice, just quiet. Adam? I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. No response. I moved through the living room, noticing small changes. My favorite throw pillow was missing. The photos of my family were gone from the mantel. A chill ran down my spine as I approached the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear muffled sounds coming from inside. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. The world stopped. There, tangled in our sheets, the ones I'd picked out when we first moved in, was Adam. And he wasn't alone. A blonde head peeked out from under the covers, and I found myself staring into the startled eyes of Claire, Adam's coworker. For a moment, no one moved. Then Adam scrambled up, wrapping a sheet around his waist. I can explain. But I was already backing away, my vision blurring with tears. I turned and ran, Adam's desperate calls fading behind me. I made it to the elevator before the sobs hit, racking my body as I slumped against the wall. How could he? After everything we'd been through, how could he do this? My phone buzzed incessantly, Adam no doubt trying to reach me. I silenced it, unable to deal with his excuses. Instead, I called the one person I knew would understand. "Jen," I choked out when she answered. "Can you come get me? I'm at the condo." 20 minutes later, I was in Jen's car, recounting the horrific scene I'd walked in on. "That bastard," Jen seethed, gripping the steering wheel. "I'll kill him." I shook my head, feeling hollow. I can't believe it. Was I so blind? How long has this been going on? Jen's expression softened. "Oh, honey, this isn't your fault. Adam's the one who broke his vows." As we drove, my shock slowly gave way to anger. Years of compromises, of bending to Adam's and Lily's will flashed through my mind. And for what? To be betrayed in the most painful way possible? "I want to destroy him," I whispered, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. Jen glanced at me, a fierce glint in her eye. "Then let's destroy him. You've got options, Em. Legal options." My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Lily. "How dare you upset Adam like this? Call him back immediately." Something snapped inside me. The last thread of hope, of love, severed cleanly. "You're right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need a lawyer, and I need to document everything." Jen nodded approvingly. "That's my girl. We'll start making calls tomorrow. For now, let's get you somewhere safe." As we pulled up to Jen's apartment, I felt a strange mix of devastation and determination. My marriage was over. That much was clear. But this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my revenge. I stepped out of the car, leaving behind the naive, accommodating Emily. In her place stood a woman scorned, a woman ready to fight for herself. Adam and Lily had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. The office of Harriet Sloane, divorce attorney extraordinaire, buzzed with an energy that matched my own determination. I sat across from her, a thick folder of evidence spread between us. "Well, Emily," Harriet said, her steely eyes gleaming, "I must say, you've given me quite a lot to work with." I nodded, my jaw set. "I want everything I'm entitled to, and then some." Harriet smiled, a predatory grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "Oh, we'll get that and more. Adam's infidelity, combined with the financial records you've provided. Let's just say he's in for a rude awakening." As we discussed strategy, my phone buzzed incessantly. "Adam," again. I silenced it without a second thought. "Now," Harriet continued, "about the condo." A commotion outside interrupted us. Raised voices, a scuffle. Suddenly the door burst open, revealing a disheveled Adam and an irate Lily. "Emily!" Adam cried, his eyes wild. "Please, just talk to me." I stood, fury coursing through my veins. "How dare you come here? This is a private meeting." Lily pushed past Adam, her face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "That's quite enough," Harriet interjected, her voice sharp as a blade. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, I suggest you leave immediately before I call security." Adam stepped forward, his hands outstretched. Baby, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake, but I love you." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "Love? You call what you did love? You betrayed me, Adam. You and your mother both." Lily bristled. "Now see here." "No, you see here," I snapped, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "You've controlled our lives for too long. You pushed me aside, belittled me, tried to cut me off from my own family. Well, guess what? It ends now." Adam's face paled. "What are you saying?" I turned to Harriet, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm saying I want a divorce, and I'm going to take you for everything you're worth." The room fell silent. Adam staggered back as if I'd physically struck him. Lily's mouth opened and closed, for once at a loss for words. "You can't do this," Adam finally whispered. "What about our life together? Our future?" "Our future," I echoed incredulously. "You threw that away the moment you decided to sleep with Claire." Adam's eyes widened in shock. Lily gasped, turning to her son. "You didn't." "Oh, he did," I confirmed, a grim satisfaction settling over me. In our bed, no less. The look of betrayal on Lily's face almost made me laugh. Almost. "Adam," she hissed, "is this true?" He fumbled for words, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "Mom, It's not." "Save it," I cut in. "I have all the evidence I need. Now both of you, get out." Security arrived, summoned by Harriet's discreet call. As they were escorted out, Adam made one last desperate plea. "Emily, please. I'll do anything. We can start over, just the two of us. No more interference, I promise." For a moment I wavered. The look in his eyes, so familiar, so full of regret. But then I remembered the sight of him with Claire, and my resolve hardened. "Goodbye, Adam," I said quietly, turning away. As the door closed behind them, I sank back into my chair, exhausted but exhilarated. Harriet watched me carefully. "Are you all right?" she asked. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Yes," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. "I think I finally am." Harriet nodded approvingly. "Good. Now let's get back to business. We have a lot of work to do." As we dove back into the details of the divorce proceedings, I felt a spark of excitement. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready. Adam and Lily had underestimated me for the last time. Now it was my turn to show them exactly what I was capable of. 1 year. It had been 1 year since I'd walked out of that condo, leaving behind a life that no longer fit. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the meek, accommodating Emily. In her place stood someone stronger, fiercer. Today was the day. The final hearing in my divorce proceedings against Adam. I'd fought tooth and nail for every concession, every dollar. Harriet had been a godsend, guiding me through the legal labyrinth with a shark-like tenacity that matched my own newfound determination. As I entered the courthouse, I spotted Adam and Lily huddled together, looking haggard and defeated. Adam's eyes met mine, a flicker of regret passing over his face. I held his gaze unflinching before turning away. The proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and tense negotiations, but when the judge finally announced her decision, time seemed to stand still. In light of the evidence presented, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Emily Thompson. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me as the judge detailed the settlement. The condo, half of Adam's savings, alimony. It was more than I dared hope for. As we filed out of the courtroom, Lily accosted me, her face twisted with fury. "You've ruined him," she hissed. "Are you happy now?" I met her gaze calmly. "No, Lily, you ruined him. You and your constant meddling, your toxic influence. I just finally stood up for myself." Adam appeared behind her, looking shell-shocked. Save it, Adam." I cut him off. "It's over. Really, truly over." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. I was free. Months passed. I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit, channeling my newfound energy into causes I believed in. I reconnected with old friends, rebuilt my relationship with my parents. Slowly but surely, I rediscovered the joy in life that I'd lost during my marriage. Then, on a crisp autumn evening, my phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Emily?" Lily's voice was small, broken. I need your help." She went on to explain how Adam had spiraled after the divorce, losing his job, turning to drinking. She was at her wit's end. "Please," she begged. "You're the only one who might be able to get through to him." For a moment, I was tempted. The old Emily would have rushed to help, would have sacrificed her own well-being for others. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "I'm sorry, Lily," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "But that's not my responsibility anymore. Adam's choices are his own, just like yours. I hope you both find the help you need, but it won't be from me." I ended the call, a sense of finality settling over me. It was the last thread connecting me to my old life, and I'd just cut it clean. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below. My phone buzzed with a text from Jen. "Drinks tomorrow to celebrate your promotion?" I smiled, typing back a quick, "Absolutely." As I gazed out at the skyline, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been hard, painful at times, but I'd emerged stronger, wiser, more true to myself than I'd ever been. I thought about the woman I was a year ago, trapped in a loveless marriage, constantly bending to the will of others. She seemed like a stranger now. "You did it, Emily," I whispered to myself, raising my glass in a silent toast. "You survived. You thrived." The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. For the first time in years, I was excited to see where life would take me next. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. As the cool night air caressed my face, I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. This wasn't an ending, I realized. It was a beginning. My beginning. And I couldn't wait to see what came next.